The moment Evelyn Hart whispered those 6 words into the ear of the city's most feared crime boss, she sealed her fate. One warning, one breath, one choice that would shatter the invisible life she'd built brick by careful brick. Because Lucian Moretti didn't forgive debts, he collected them. And saving his life meant she now belonged to a world where mercy was currency and violence was language. A world her dead father had hidden from her. A world that had been watching her all along. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Evelyn's story travels. The restaurant smelled like money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. White tablecloths, crystal that caught the light just so. Servers who moved like dancers, silent and smooth, carrying plates that cost more than Evelyn's weekly paycheck. Evelyn Hart carried a tray of dirty glasses toward the kitchen, her shoulders curved inward the way they always were. 26 years old, and she'd perfected the art of taking up no space at all. Small steps, quiet breathing, eyes down. She'd learned it from her father during the bad years. The years when every sound hurt him, when even her presence in the room felt like too much weight on his failing lungs. He'd been dead 3 months now, and she still moved through the world like she might shatter it. "Table 12 needs water," Marcus said as she passed. He was the floor manager, 40-something with slicked back hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. The VIP section. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She hated the VIP section, hated the way those men looked at her, or more accurately, looked through her, like she was part of the furniture. Another pretty thing to ignore. "Can't someone else?" "Now, Evelyn." She grabbed a pitcher from the bar, checked her reflection in the polished chrome. Pale skin. Brown hair pulled back so tight it made her temples ache. The kind of face people forgot immediately. That was the point. The VIP section sat on a raised platform at the back of the restaurant, separated from the main floor by a half wall of frosted glass. Privacy without isolation, power without pretense. 3 men sat at table 12. No, 2 men sat. The third one owned the space around him. Evelyn had never seen him before, but she knew who he was. Everyone in the city knew Lucian Moretti, even if they'd never laid eyes on him. You didn't need to see a hurricane to know it was coming. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe 35, with black hair cut sharp and a suit that probably cost more than her car. But it wasn't the expensive clothes that made the air feel thinner around him. It was the way he sat, absolutely still, like a predator conserving energy. Like he knew the room would come to him. His companions were talking, but he wasn't listening. His eyes tracked something across the restaurant, calculating. Cold. Evelyn's hand shook as she approached the table. Water sloshed against the rim of the pitcher. "Gentlemen?" Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Can I—" Lucian's gaze shifted to her. The words died in her throat. His eyes were dark, not brown, something deeper, the kind of dark that didn't reflect light. And for just a second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition, though that made no sense. She'd never met this man in her life. "Water," she managed, her pulse hammering against her wrists. "Thank you." His voice was quiet, controlled. But there was weight to it, like every word cost something. She filled his glass first, then the others. Her hand steadied as she worked, muscle memory taking over. This she could do. Pour water, smile politely, disappear. But when she glanced up, Lucian was still watching her. Not the way men usually watched. Not assessing or dismissive. He was studying her, the way you'd study a puzzle that didn't fit together right. "Will there be anything else?" she asked. "No." One of the other men waved her off without looking up from his phone. She turned to go. "Wait." Lucian's voice wasn't loud, but it stopped her like a hand on her shoulder. "What's your name?" The other 2 men went quiet. The air in the VIP section changed, thickened somehow, like everyone was holding their breath. "Evelyn?" She shouldn't have told him, shouldn't have met his eyes again. But she did both. "Evelyn." He said it slowly, testing the shape of it. Then he nodded once, a dismissal that felt strangely gentle. "Thank you, Evelyn." She walked away on legs that didn't quite feel like hers. The rest of the shift blurred. Orders, drinks, small talk she didn't register. But she felt Lucian's presence the entire time, a pressure at the edge of her awareness. Twice she caught him looking in her direction. Both times he glanced away first. It was nearly midnight when Marcus appeared beside her, his cologne too strong in the narrow corridor between the kitchen and the dining room. "You did good tonight," he said. His hand landed on her lower back, too familiar, too low. Evelyn stepped away. "Thanks. Table 12 asked about you." Her blood went cold. "What?" "Relax." Marcus smiled, and something about it made her skin crawl. "Just making conversation. Important men like that, they notice pretty girls. It's natural. I'm not... You should be flattered." His hand found her back again, fingers spreading wide. "Man like Moretti showing interest? That's opportunity, Evelyn. Smart girls know how to use that." She pulled away harder this time, her shoulder hitting the wall. "I'm not interested in being used." Marcus's smile thinned. "Careful. You're not so valuable that you can't be replaced." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the corridor with her heart in her throat. She pressed her forehead against the cool wall and breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the hospice nurse had taught her during those final weeks with her father. "You're fine. You're safe. He's just an asshole with boundary issues." But her hands were shaking again. At 1 a.m., the restaurant started to empty. The kitchen staff filtered out in twos and threes, calling goodbyes that echoed in the cavernous dining room. Evelyn wiped down her section for the third time, drawing out the work. Going home meant returning to the apartment where her father's oxygen tank still sat in the corner, where his silence had weight. "Evelyn?" She jumped, nearly dropping the rag. Marcus stood in the archway to the VIP section. "Table 12 wants another round. Can you handle it?" "It's past midnight." "They're still here, so are you." He jerked his chin toward the bar. "Whiskey, top shelf, 2 fingers each." She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to do it himself, or better yet, tell those men that the bar was closed. But Marcus had already turned away, and she needed this job, needed the paycheck that kept the lights on in an apartment she could barely afford. The bartender, Luis, 60s kind eyes, poured the whiskey without comment. But when she reached for the tray, he caught her wrist. "Be careful," he said quietly. "Of what?" He glanced toward the VIP section. "Men like that, they don't do anything without reason. If he's asking for you specifically, there's a reason." "He didn't ask for me specifically. Marcus does what he's told." Luis released her wrist. "Watch yourself, mija. And if something feels wrong, you run." The tray felt heavier as she carried it across the empty restaurant. Her footsteps echoed against the marble floor, too loud in the quiet. Table 12 had changed. The 2 men who'd been with Lucian were gone. Now there were 4 new faces, harder faces, with the kind of stillness that came from violence. They sat in a loose circle around Lucian, who occupied the same chair as before, in the exact same position. But something was different. The air felt electric, charged with tension she didn't understand. "Gentlemen?" She set the tray down, began distributing glasses. "Your whiskey." No one responded. They weren't looking at her. They were looking at Lucian, waiting for something. She placed the last glass in front of a man with a scar through his eyebrow. His eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Will there be anything else?" "Actually, yes." The scarred man's voice was rough, like gravel under tires. He smiled, and it was the ugliest thing Evelyn had ever seen. "Sit down." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Her throat had closed up. "I don't... Sit." Not a request. Lucian's eyes cut to the scarred man. "That's enough, Vincent." "Is it?" Vincent's smile widened. "You've been distracted all night, Lucian. I'm curious why." The other men shifted. Hands disappeared under jackets. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Evelyn's heart was a drum against her ribs. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. She needed to leave, needed to... "Forgive my associate," Lucian said to her. His voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was steel underneath now. "He forgets his manners." "I remember just fine." Vincent leaned back in his chair, whiskey glass dangling from his fingers. "I remember a lot of things, like how you used to handle distractions." The words hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn took a step backward, then another. "Evelyn!" Lucian's voice stopped her. When she looked at him, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had. A warning, maybe. Or a plea. She couldn't tell. "You should go," he said. She didn't need to be told twice. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, forcing herself not to run. Behind her, Vincent's laugh echoed across the empty restaurant, sharp and cruel. "Sweet girl," he called after her. "Better run fast." The kitchen was empty except for Louise, who was wiping down the espresso machine. "You okay?" he asked, taking one look at her face. "I need to—" She pressed her hands against the stainless steel counter, trying to steady herself. "Something's wrong." "What happened?" "I don't know, but those men, they—" The sound of breaking glass cut through the air. Louise went rigid. "Get in the walk-in." "What?" "Now, Evelyn." But she was already moving toward the door, drawn by instinct she didn't understand. Through the circular window, she could see into the dining room. The VIP section was chaos. Two of Lucian's men were on the floor. Vincent stood over them, gun in hand. The other men had weapons drawn, pointed at Lucian, who sat perfectly still in his chair. His hands were on the table, palms down. Calm. Too calm. "Oh, Jesus," Louise whispered behind her. "Oh, Christ." Marcus appeared from somewhere, walking fast toward the VIP section. Not running, not panicking, walking, like he knew exactly what was happening. And suddenly, Evelyn understood. Marcus had sent her out there, had insisted she handle table 12 all night, had positioned her exactly where Vincent wanted her, as leverage or distraction or bait. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "We have to call the police," she said. "And tell them what? That we witnessed a mob execution?" Louise grabbed her arm. "Those men own half the precinct. We call the cops, we die too. But we stay out of it. That's how you survive in this city." Evelyn watched Marcus approach Vincent, watched them exchange words she couldn't hear, watched Vincent's gun stay trained on Lucian's chest. Lucian, who'd looked at her like she mattered, who'd said her name like it meant something. "None of your business," she told herself. "Not your problem." But her father's voice whispered in the back of her mind, hoarse from the cancer eating his lungs. "You're stronger than you think, Evie. When it matters, you'll know what to do." She pulled away from Louise. "Don't!" he hissed. "Don't be stupid!" But she was already pushing through the kitchen door, her legs moving before her brain could catch up. The dining room felt enormous. Every step echoed. Vincent's head turned toward her, and she saw the exact moment he registered her presence. Saw the calculation in his eyes. "Well, well." He shifted the gun slightly, still pointed at Lucian, but tracking her approach. "The shy little waitress. Come to say goodbye to your admirer?" Marcus grabbed her arm. "What the hell are you doing?" She yanked free, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She didn't have a plan, didn't know what she was doing, but she kept walking, right up to the edge of the VIP section. "I need to speak to Mr. Moretti." Her voice shook, but it came out clear enough. Vincent laughed. "You need to speak to him? Honey, you're about to watch him die. Find a different career counselor." "Evelyn." Lucian's voice was soft. "Leave." She ignored him. Ignored everything except the terrible clarity settling over her like ice water. Marcus was part of this. The restaurant was part of this. She was supposed to be part of this, a pawn in whatever game these men were playing. But she was tired of being invisible, tired of being moved around like furniture. "I said leave," Lucian repeated, and this time there was an edge to it. Not anger, fear. He was afraid for her. The realization gave her courage she didn't know she had. She stepped onto the VIP platform. Vincent's gun swung toward her. "That's far enough. I just need 1 second." She looked at Lucian, tried to pour every ounce of meaning into her gaze. "Please." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Lucian nodded. 1 second. She crossed the distance between them, her legs shaking so badly she was amazed she stayed upright. When she reached his chair, she leaned down like she was going to whisper something private. But what came out of her mouth wasn't a whisper. "Marcus is the inside man." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she straightened up and stepped back, her entire body vibrating with adrenaline. The room went deadly silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "She's lying. She's confused. She doesn't know." The bartender. Evelyn's voice was stronger now. Luis. He's been here 20 years. Ask him who scheduled the private reservation tonight. Ask him who insisted I work this section. Vincent's expression flickered. Uncertainty, maybe. Or calculation. Lucian's eyes hadn't left Evelyn's face. In them, she saw something that looked like wonder. Is that true, Marcus? Vincent asked, his voice silky. She's a nobody. A confused nobody who... Answer the question. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then he ran. He made it 3 steps before one of Vincent's men caught him, slamming him face first into a table. Glass shattered. Marcus screamed. In the chaos, Lucian moved. It happened so fast, Evelyn barely tracked it. 1 second he was sitting, hands on the table. The next, he had Vincent's wrist in an iron grip, forcing the gun toward the ceiling. A shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. Then Lucian's other hand was around Vincent's throat, and Vincent was on his knees, gasping. Enough! Lucian's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone froze. You came into my city, Lucian said quietly, into my establishment, and you thought you could take what's mine? Vincent made a choking sound. I should kill you for the disrespect alone. Lucian's grip tightened. But that would be wasteful. So instead, you're going to tell me exactly who sent you and what they promised you. And then you're going to leave Chicago and never come back. Are we clear? Vincent's face was purple. He managed a jerky nod. Lucian released him, and Vincent collapsed onto the floor, coughing. Take him, Lucian said to his men. And Marcus, I want to know everything. They moved with efficient violence, hauling both men toward the back exit. Marcus was crying, begging. Vincent stayed silent, but his eyes promised murder. And then, impossibly, it was over. The VIP section was a wreck. Broken glass, overturned chairs, bullet holes in the ceiling. But the violence had passed, leaving only heavy silence in its wake. Evelyn stood frozen in the middle of it all, her mind trying to process what had just happened. Lucian turned to face her. Blood stained his white shirt. Not his own, she didn't think. His hair had fallen out of place, but his eyes were steady, fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. You shouldn't have done that, he said. I know. You could have died. I know. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing right in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. Why? He asked. The truth sat on her tongue, too big and strange to make sense. Because you looked at me like I was real. Because for 1 second tonight, I wasn't invisible. But she couldn't say that. Couldn't explain the impulse that had driven her forward when every sane instinct screamed to run. I don't know, she whispered. Lucian studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out and touched her cheek with the backs of his fingers, the gentlest pressure. You're shaking, he said. Yes. Are you afraid of me? She should be. She should be terrified. This man had just choked another human being with the same casual ease most people used to tie their shoes. But when she looked into his eyes, all she felt was an ache she couldn't name. No, she said. I'm not afraid of you. Well, something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable and quickly hidden. You will be, he said softly. Eventually. He stepped back, breaking the moment. When he spoke again, his voice had returned to that controlled calm. I'm having my men secure the building. You'll stay here until it's safe. I should go home. Your home isn't safe anymore. He said it matter-of-factly, the way you'd comment on the weather. The moment you spoke, you became a target. Vincent's people will be looking for you. So will anyone else who sees you as a loose end. The words landed like stones in her stomach. But I didn't do anything. You exposed a traitor, saved my life, demonstrated loyalty in front of witnesses. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. In my world, that makes you valuable and dangerous, which means you can't go back to your normal life. That's insane. That's reality. Evelyn's vision swam. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Her father's apartment, her job, her carefully constructed invisible life, gone. All of it gone because she'd opened her mouth. I don't understand, she said. any of this. I don't understand why anyone would. Money. Lucian's voice was flat. Or power, or fear. Take your pick. And you? What's your reason? For what? For all of this. She gestured at the destroyed VIP section, at the world he inhabited. The violence, the control. What's your reason? He looked at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Survival, he said finally. Same as everyone else. I'm just better at it. They moved her to a back office while Lucian's men cleaned up, a euphemism she tried not to examine too closely. The office belonged to the restaurant owner, apparently. Sleek furniture, abstract art. A window overlooking the alley where a black SUV now sat, engine running. Evelyn sat in a leather chair and tried to stop her hands from shaking. Luis appeared in the doorway, his face gray. You okay, mija? Did you know? The question came out sharper than she'd intended. About Marcus? I suspected. Luis looked at his shoes, but suspecting and knowing, those are different things in this business. What business? This is a restaurant. This is a front. He met her eyes. I thought you knew that. Everyone knows Moretti owns half the city. I didn't. Her laugh came out broken. I didn't know anything. Luis crossed the room and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. You should have run when I told you to. Would it have mattered? Probably not, he sighed, but at least you'd have tried. A knock at the door made them both jump. One of Lucian's men, tall, black hair, cold eyes, stepped inside. She comes with us, he said to Luis. Where? Evelyn stood up, her pulse spiking again. Safe house. Boss's orders. I'm not going anywhere until I talk to Lucian. The man's expression didn't change. The boss is handling business. You don't want to interrupt that. The implied threat hung in the air. Luis squeezed her shoulder. Go with them, Evelyn. It's safer. Then what? Nobody answered. The SUV smelled like leather and gunpowder. Evelyn sat in the back seat, pressed against the door, while two of Lucian's men occupied the front. Neither spoke. Neither even looked at her. They drove through downtown Chicago, past midnight streets that glittered with rain. The city looked different from inside this vehicle. Smaller, somehow. More manageable. Like it existed for the sole purpose of getting out of their way. After 20 minutes, they pulled up to a building in River North. Expensive. The kind of place with a doorman and security cameras that actually worked. This is a safe house? Evelyn asked as they ushered her into a pristine lobby. Top floor, one of the men said. It was the first time either had spoken since leaving the restaurant. The elevator was mirror-lined. Evelyn caught sight of herself and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair had fallen out of its bun. Her eyes looked too wide, too dark. Like someone in shock. You are in shock, she thought. This is what shock looks like. The elevator opened directly into an apartment. Not an apartment. A space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that belonged in a magazine. Art that was probably worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Make yourself comfortable, one of the men said. We'll be right outside. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and Evelyn was alone. She walked to the windows on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The city spread below her like a constellation, lights and motion and countless lives being lived in the dark. Somewhere down there was her apartment, her father's oxygen tank, the life she'd been living 3 hours ago. It felt like a memory from someone else's life. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. What have I done? She must have fallen asleep on the couch because she woke to the sound of a door opening. Lucian stood in the entrance, backlit by the hallway. He'd changed clothes, the blood-stained shirt replaced by a simple black t-shirt and jeans. It made him look younger, almost normal, except for his eyes. Those were still ancient. You're awake, he said. Evelyn sat up, disoriented. What time is it? 4 a.m. He moved into the apartment, his footsteps silent on the hardwood. How are you feeling? Confused, scared. She rubbed her face. Angry, maybe. At me? At everything. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. I need to tell you some things, and you're not going to like them. More bad news? Great. Something that might have been humor flickered across his face. "May I sit?" She gestured to the chair across from her. He sat, leaning back with an ease that suggested he'd been here before. Probably owned the place. "Vincent talked," he said, "as I knew he would. He was hired by a man named Konstantin Volkov, Russian syndicate trying to expand into Chicago. The hit tonight was meant to send a message. And Marcus? Debt, gambling mostly. Volkov's people offered him a way out if he provided access and intelligence." Lucian's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "He gave them my schedule, told them which nights I'd be at the restaurant, made sure you'd be working my section." "Why me?" "Because you're small, unassuming, the kind of person no one notices." He met her eyes. "The perfect distraction." The words stung more than they should have. "But you noticed me," she said quietly. "Yes." Something shifted in his expression, softened, maybe. "I did." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. 3 months ago, I attended a private event at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, a fundraiser for the oncology wing. You were there with your father. Evelyn's breath caught. "I don't remember seeing you." "You wouldn't have. I was leaving as you arrived. But I saw you help him from the car, saw the way you held his hand, the way you smiled at him even though he barely had the strength to stand." Lucian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I watched you for maybe 30 seconds, and in those 30 seconds, I saw more love than I'd witnessed in my entire life." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the sudden ache in her chest. "When I saw you tonight," he continued, "I recognized you immediately. Spent the whole evening trying to figure out why you were working here, what the odds were, whether it was coincidence or what? Or fate." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. "And then you saved my life, and I stopped questioning." Evelyn pressed her hands against her thighs, trying to anchor herself. "My father died 6 weeks after that fundraiser." "I know. I'm sorry." "How do you know?" "Because after tonight, I had my people look into you. Your father, Robert Hart, lung cancer. Worked as an accountant for 30 years before he got sick." Lucian paused. "And before that, he did something else." The room seemed to tilt. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn whispered. "Your father didn't just keep books for corporations, Evelyn. For 10 years, he was the chief financial officer for the Andretti family, one of the oldest crime syndicates in Chicago." Lucian's voice was gentle, but the words were knives. He knew where every dollar came from and where it went. He was one of the most valuable men in the organization. "No." She stood up, her heart racing. "That's not possible. My father was a good man. He worked normal jobs. He left that life when you were born, made a deal with the Andrettis. He'd keep their secrets if they let him go, and they did, because they valued him. But that doesn't change what he was." Evelyn backed away until she hit the window. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Lucian stood too, but didn't approach. "There's more. Your father kept records. Insurance, in case the Andrettis ever decided to go back on their deal. Files documenting every transaction, every connection. And when he died, those files disappeared. I don't have any files. I barely have anything of his. Just medical bills and furniture, and someone thinks you do. Volkov. The Andrettis. Probably half the organizations in this city. That's why Vincent's people were so interested in you. Not because you were a distraction, but because you're Robert Hart's daughter. And whoever controls you might control access to 30 years of buried secrets." The words crashed over her like a wave. She slid down the window until she was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest. "This isn't real," she said. "None of this is real." Lucian crossed the room and crouched in front of her, his dark eyes level with hers. "It's real, Evelyn, and it's dangerous. Which is why you can't go home. Can't go back to your life. Because the moment the word spreads that you helped me tonight, every organization with something to lose will come looking for you." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Her voice broke. "Hide forever? Become someone else?" "No." He reached out slowly like he was approaching a wounded animal and touched her hand. His fingers were warm, steady. "You stay here, under my protection, until we figure out what your father left behind and who wants it badly enough to kill for it. And then? And then you get to choose. Walk away with enough money to start over somewhere safe, or? His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the gesture so gentle it made her chest ache. Or you stay, he said quietly, with me, in this world. She looked at their joined hands, looked at his face, the sharp lines and careful control, the power that radiated from him like heat. He was dangerous, violent, everything she should run from. But he was also the first person in months who'd looked at her like she mattered. I don't even know you, she whispered. Then get to know me. His voice was rough. I'm not a good man, Evelyn. I've done things that would make you sick, but I keep my word. And I'm telling you now, as long as you're under my protection, nothing will touch you. Why? The question tore out of her. Why do you care? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because when I saw you at that hospital, I thought, there's someone who knows how to love completely, without conditions, without fear. His hand tightened around hers, and I wanted to know what that felt like. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Evelyn's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. I don't know how to live in your world, she said. Then I'll teach you. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You walked into a room full of armed men to save a stranger. His mouth curved into a small, genuine smile. You're stronger than you think. And there it was, her father's words, coming from this dangerous man's mouth. Like the universe was trying to tell her something. She took a shaky breath. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll stay, for now, until we figure this out. Lucian's smile widened into something that looked almost like relief. He stood, pulling her up with him, his hand still wrapped around hers. Get some rest, he said. We have a lot of work to do tomorrow. Where will you be? Right outside. I'm not leaving you unguarded. He turned to go, but Evelyn's voice stopped him. Lucian? He looked back. Thank you, she said, for telling me the truth. His expression softened into something she couldn't quite read. You deserve to know, even if it hurts. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Evelyn stood in the silent apartment, her mind racing. Her father had been part of this world, had lived a secret life she'd never suspected, and now she was here too, pulled into the dark by a man who frightened and fascinated her in equal measure. She should run, should find a way out before she got in any deeper. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Lucian's face as he'd said, I wanted to know what that felt like. For the first time in 3 months, maybe for the first time in her life, Evelyn didn't feel invisible. And that terrified her more than anything else. Evelyn woke to sunlight knifing through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee she hadn't made. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in her father's hospital room, that antiseptic brightness, the sense of being somewhere that wasn't home. Then memory crashed back. The restaurant. Vincent's gun. Lucian's hand on hers. Her father's secret life. She sat up on the couch where she'd finally collapsed around dawn, her neck stiff and her mouth tasting like copper. The apartment looked different in daylight, less intimidating, but no less expensive. Everything was clean lines and neutral colors, the kind of space that didn't invite living so much as existing. You're awake. She jumped. Lucian stood in the kitchen area, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like he'd slept 8 hours and had a personal stylist on call. She probably looked like she'd been hit by a truck. How long have you been here? Her voice came out rough. About an hour. Coffee? Please. He poured from a French press into a white ceramic mug, then crossed the open space to hand it to her. Their fingers brushed. She tried not to notice the warmth of his skin. Did you sleep? She asked. Some. He settled into the chair across from her, the same position as last night, like he was giving her space. We have a lot to discuss. Evelyn wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat ground her. About my father. Yes. And about what happens next. Which is? That depends on what you want. She almost laughed. What I want is to wake up yesterday morning and have none of this be real. That's not an option. I know. She took a sip of coffee. It was perfect. Strong, not bitter. Of course it was. So what are my actual options? Lucian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. In the morning light, she could see faint shadows under his eyes, the only evidence that last night had affected him at all. Option 1, he said. I set you up with new identification, enough money to start over, and a location far from Chicago. You disappear, live quietly, never look back. And option 2? You stay. Help me find whatever your father left behind. And in exchange, I teach you how to survive in this world. Why would I choose option 2? His dark eyes held hers. Because running means spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Because whoever's searching for your father's files won't stop just because you left town. And because, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I think you're tired of being invisible. The observation hit too close. Evelyn looked away, focusing on the city beyond the windows. Morning traffic crawled along the streets below, thousands of people going about their normal lives. Lives she'd been part of 24 hours ago. If I stay, she said slowly, what exactly does that mean? It means you're under my protection. You live here or somewhere equally secure. You don't go anywhere without guards, and you help me understand what your father knew. I already told you I don't have any files. But you might have information, details about his life you didn't know were important, names he mentioned, places he visited. Lucian's voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. Your father spent 10 years managing money for the Andretti family. He knew things that could destroy powerful people. If he kept insurance, there's a reason, and that reason might be hidden in plain sight. Evelyn thought about her father's apartment, the boxes she'd been avoiding for 3 months, his old notebooks, the ancient desktop computer she hadn't had the heart to throw away. I haven't gone through all his things yet, she admitted. Then that's where we start. We? You don't do this alone, Evelyn. Not anymore. There was something in his tone, a gentleness that didn't match the violence she'd witnessed last night. She studied his face, trying to reconcile the man who'd choked Vincent with the one currently offering her coffee and careful words. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Last night, when you had Vincent on the ground, she hesitated. You could have killed him. Why didn't you? Lucian was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Because dead men can't deliver messages. Vincent will go back to Volkov and tell him what happened, that I'm not an easy target, that I have resources he didn't anticipate, he paused, and that I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. No, he agreed, but they don't know that. The implication settled between them like smoke. By helping him, by speaking up in that restaurant, she'd already chosen a side whether she wanted to admit it or not. What if I can't find anything? She asked. What if my father destroyed whatever files he had? Then we deal with that when it happens. But right now, doing nothing isn't safe. Volkov knows you exist, so do the Andrettis. So does anyone else who's been watching. Lucian stood, moving to the windows. The moment word spread about last night, you became a piece on the board. The only question is whether you're a pawn or a player. Evelyn set down her coffee mug, her hands steadier than they'd been minutes ago. And you think I can be a player? I think you walked into gunfire to save a stranger. That takes either stupidity or courage. I'm betting on courage. You barely know me. He turned from the window, and the look he gave her was so intense it stole her breath. I know you stayed with your father until the end. I know you worked 2 jobs to pay off his medical bills. I know you notice things other people miss, like Marcus being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He crossed back to her, stopping just close enough to matter. I know enough. She should tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't brave, wasn't strong, that she'd spent the last 3 months barely holding herself together. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, when do we start? Something like satisfaction flickered across Lucian's face. Now, get dressed. We're going to your apartment. Is that safe? No, but necessary beats safe. He headed toward the door, then paused. Evelyn, don't mistake my protection for control. You can still choose option 1. I won't stop you. But you don't want me to. No, he said quietly. I don't. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with cold coffee and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She found clothes in the bedroom, jeans and a sweater that fit perfectly, which meant someone had gone shopping for her while she slept. The thought should have creeped her out. Instead, she felt a strange warmth. When was the last time someone had anticipated her needs? 20 minutes later, she emerged to find Lucian waiting with two men she recognized from last night, the tall one with black hair and the shorter one with a scar on his jaw. "This is Marco and Sal," Lucian said. "They'll be with us." Marco nodded at her. Sal didn't acknowledge her at all. "Hi," Evelyn said, because what else did you say to armed bodyguards? "We take two cars," Lucian continued. "Marco drives us, Sal follows. If anything seems wrong, you do exactly what I say. Clear?" "Crystal." They rode the elevator down in silence. The lobby was empty except for the doorman, who looked pointedly away as they passed. Evelyn wondered how much he got paid to see nothing. Outside, two black SUVs idled at the curb. The day was overcast, threatening rain. Chicago in early April, always on the edge of something. Marco held the rear door open. Evelyn slid in and Lucian followed, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. The contact sent an unwelcome jolt through her system. "What part of town?" Marco asked as he pulled into traffic. "Lincoln Park, off Fullerton." Evelyn gave him the exact address, and Marco's eyebrows went up slightly. "That's Andretti territory." "I know," Lucian said. "Does Andretti know?" "Not yet, but he will soon enough." Evelyn looked between them. "Should I be worried about that?" "Yes," Marco said. At the same time, Lucian said, "No." Lucian shot Marco a look, then turned to Evelyn. "The Andretti family has claim to that neighborhood. Your father's old employer. They'll have people watching, but as long as we're in and out quickly, we should be fine." "And if we're not fine?" "Then Marco earns his paycheck." It was meant to be reassuring. It wasn't. They drove through morning traffic, the city waking up around them. Evelyn watched people on sidewalks, heading to work, walking dogs, grabbing coffee. Normal people living normal lives. A week ago, she'd been one of them. "You're quiet," Lucian observed. "Thinking. About?" "How fast things can change. Last month, my biggest problem was deciding whether to pay the electric bill or the phone bill first. Now I'm in an SUV with a crime boss, heading to my apartment to search for evidence my dead father might have been a criminal." "He wasn't a criminal. He was a professional who made difficult choices." "Is there a difference?" Lucian considered this. "Yes. Criminals take what they want without thought. Professionals understand consequences." "And which are you?" His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Both, neither. Depends on the day." The honesty surprised her. She'd expected deflection or pretty lies about honor among thieves. Instead, he gave her the truth, unvarnished. "Can I ask what you do?" she said. "Specifically, I mean, I know you're powerful, but I don't actually know what that means." "I manage interests, real estate mostly, some import-export, entertainment venues. Legal interest? Some of them." Evelyn laughed despite herself. "You're very honest for a criminal." "Liar would be redundant in my line of work. I prefer direct." He shifted to face her more fully. "I inherited my father's business when I was 23. Spent the next decade consolidating power, making alliances, eliminating threats. The work isn't glamorous. Mostly it's spreadsheets and territory negotiations. But sometimes it's guns and blood." "Yes. And you're okay with that?" "No one's okay with it. But some of us are better at it than others." His voice dropped lower. "I don't enjoy violence, Evelyn. But I'm good at it. And in this world, being good at something means staying alive." They turned onto her street, and Evelyn's stomach clenched. The building looked exactly the same. Shabby brick, crooked fire escape, the broken buzzer that never got fixed. Home. Except it didn't feel like home anymore. Marco parked half a block down. Sal pulled in behind them. Both drivers stayed in their vehicles, engines running. "Third floor," Evelyn said. "Apartment 3B. Lucian nodded to Marco, who spoke quietly into a radio. Some kind of security check. "We're clear for now," Marco said after a moment, "but make it quick." They climbed the stairs, Lucian in front, Evelyn in the middle, Marco behind. The hallway smelled like cooking grease and old carpet, Misses. Chen's door was open a crack, the TV blaring inside. Everything exactly as it always was. Evelyn unlocked her apartment with shaking hands. The space was small. Living room, kitchenette, one bedroom. Her father had slept on the couch for the last year of his life because he couldn't make it to the bedroom. The oxygen tank still sat in the corner, tubing coiled beside it like a sleeping snake. "This is it," she said unnecessarily. Lucian moved through the space with purpose, his eyes cataloging details. Where did he keep his personal items? Bedroom closet. I boxed most of it up after. Show me. The bedroom was worse than the living room. She'd barely entered it since the funeral. Couldn't bear to see the bed made with hospital corners, the pill bottles lined up on the nightstand. The closet was a disaster of cardboard boxes and garbage bags. She'd shoved everything in there to deal with later, and later had never come. "I don't even know what half of this is," Evelyn admitted, staring at the mess. "Then we start sorting." Lucian shrugged off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves. "Marco, watch the door." For the next 2 hours, they worked in near silence. Evelyn pulled items from boxes while Lucian examined each one: old tax returns, medical records, books on accounting and finance. Nothing that screamed secret criminal evidence. "This is pointless," Evelyn said, sitting back on her heels. "If he had files, they're not here." "They might not be physical files. What about computers, flash drives?" "He had an old desktop. It's in the living room." They moved to the ancient Dell tower, sitting on a rickety desk. Lucian powered it on, and they waited through the world's slowest boot sequence. "No password," Lucian noted as the desktop appeared. He could barely remember his own phone number at the end. Passwords weren't happening. Lucian navigated through folders with practiced efficiency. Most were empty or contained basic documents, letters, spreadsheets from his accounting days. Nothing helpful. Then Lucian opened the photo folder. Dozens of images filled the screen. Evelyn and her father at various ages, her kindergarten graduation, his retirement party. But mixed in with the family photos were others, men in suits, restaurants, buildings. "Do you know any of these people?" Lucian asked, clicking through them. "No, wait." She pointed at a man with silver hair. "That's Mr. Patterson. He used to visit sometimes when I was little. Said he worked with Dad." Lucian's expression sharpened. "Anthony Patterson. He was the Andretti family's legal counsel until he died 5 years ago." "Legal counsel's just a lawyer, right?" "In this context, it means he helped them hide money and cover up crimes." Evelyn's stomach turned. "My father let this man around me." "Your father was protecting you. If Patterson was visiting, it was probably to make sure you stayed safe. Leverage works both ways." Lucian kept clicking, more faces she didn't recognize. Then one she did. "That's the restaurant," she said, pointing. "Where I worked." The photo showed the exterior, but it was old. The awning was different, the signage outdated. "This was taken at least 15 years ago," Lucian said. He checked the file properties. 18 years, actually. "Why would my father have a picture of it?" "Because the restaurant has been a front for money laundering since the 90s. The Andrettis owned it before I acquired the property 3 years ago." He looked at her. "Your father probably helped set up the initial financial structure." The information kept piling up, each piece adding weight to a truth Evelyn didn't want to accept. Her father, the man who'd read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike, had been part of this world, had built the infrastructure that allowed it to function. "I need air," she said abruptly, standing. "Evelyn, just 5 minutes, please." She walked to the window overlooking the alley. Rain had started, light and cold. Below, a cat picked through trash. Normal city life, indifferent to her crisis. She felt Lucian's presence before she heard him. He moved quietly for someone so solid. "I know this is hard," he said. "Do you? Did you find out your parent was someone completely different than you thought?" "My father built an empire on violence and fear. I knew exactly who he was from the time I was old enough to understand." His voice was calm, matter of fact. "So no, I don't know what it's like to have illusions shattered, but I know what it's like to reconcile who someone was with who you needed them to be." Evelyn turned to face him. "Was he a good father? Yours?" "He was effective, demanding. He taught me everything I know about survival and nothing about living. Lucian's expression was unreadable, but he kept me alive. In this world, that counts for something. My dad kept me safe too, from all of this. She gestured vaguely. He left that life so I could have a normal one. And he succeeded. You had 26 years of normal. That's more than most people in our world get. Our world. The phrase settled over her like a coat she hadn't asked to wear. A crash from the living room made them both turn. Marco appeared in the doorway, gun drawn. We've got company. 3 cars just pulled up. Andretti's people. Lucian's demeanor changed instantly, from thoughtful to tactical in a heartbeat. How many? At least 8, maybe more. Back exit? Fire escape, but it leads to the alley. They'll have it covered. Lucian swore under his breath, then turned to Evelyn.
Is there another way out? Her mind raced. The roof. There's a maintenance ladder that connects to the building next door.
Show me. They moved fast, Marco leading, Evelyn in the middle, Lucian covering the rear. The stairwell was narrow, dimly lit. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs as they climbed. Behind them, she heard footsteps. Voices. Move, Lucian said quietly. The roof access was locked, but Marco kicked it open with one hit. They spilled out into the rain, the city sprawling gray and wet around them. There! Evelyn pointed to a rusty ladder bolted to the roof's edge. It goes down to the next building's fire escape. Ladies first, Marco said, already scanning for pursuit. Evelyn climbed onto the ladder, the metal slick under her hands. Heights had never been her thing, but fear was a hell of a motivator. She descended quickly, not looking down, focusing on the next rung. Behind her, Lucian followed. Above, Marco stayed on the roof, gun trained on the access door. Keep going, Lucian called down. Don't stop. Her foot hit the fire escape platform just as the roof access door burst open. Shouts, a gunshot, the sound flat and wrong in the open air. Marco! Lucian's voice was sharp with command, not fear. Another shot. Then Marco was on the ladder, descending in controlled drops. Evelyn ran down the fire escape, metal clanging under her feet. Lucian caught up to her at the second-floor landing, his hand closing around her wrist. This way. They crashed through a window, already open, thank God, into someone's apartment. An elderly man in a bathrobe stared at them from his armchair. Sorry, Evelyn gasped. Emergency. They were out the front door before he could respond, Marco right behind them. The hallway was empty. They took the stairs 2 at a time, burst into the lobby, and ran for the street. Sal had the SUV door open before they reached it. They piled in, and the vehicle was moving before the door fully closed. Go, go! Marco barked into his radio. Evelyn twisted to look out the rear window. Men in dark suits poured from her building, scanning the street. One pointed at their SUV. They're following, she said. I know. Sal didn't sound concerned. He turned hard, cutting through an alley, then another. The pursuit vehicle tried to match him, but Sal knew the streets better. Within 5 minutes, they'd lost the tail. Evelyn's entire body was shaking. Adrenaline, fear, shock, all of it crashing through her system at once. You okay? Lucian asked, his hand on her shoulder. They were waiting for us. How did they know? Someone saw us arrive, or they've been watching the apartment. His jaw was tight. Either way, we can't go back. I left everything. My father's computer. We got what we needed from it, the photos. He pulled out his phone, showing her. He'd photographed every image from her father's computer. The rest is replaceable. Evelyn slumped against the seat, exhaustion replacing fear. What now? Now we find out who those men in the photos are and what they know. Your father left breadcrumbs, Evelyn. We just need to follow them. And if the Andrettis find us first? Lucian's expression was hard. Then they'll learn why you don't corner something I'm protecting. The certainty in his voice should have been frightening. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in months. They drove in silence for a while, the city passing in wet streaks beyond the windows. Evelyn watched Lucian from the corner of her eye. He was texting rapidly, coordinating something. His face gave nothing away, but she could sense the calculation happening behind those dark eyes. We're not going back to the apartment, are we? She asked. No, somewhere more secure. He finished typing and looked at her. There's a property outside the city. Private, defensible. We'll stay there until I can arrange a meeting with Andretti. A meeting? You're going to just walk up and talk to him? I'm going to negotiate. There's a difference between territory and personal vendetta. Andretti needs to understand which this is. And which is it? Personal. His eyes held hers. You're under my protection now. That makes you untouchable. The words sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. She looked away, focusing on the rain instead of the way Lucian made her feel. Safe and seen and something else she didn't have a name for yet. They drove for another 40 minutes, leaving the city behind. The landscape shifted to suburbs, then to something more rural. Trees crowded the road. Houses became sparse. Finally, Sal turned onto a private drive marked only by a gate that opened as they approached. The road wound through woods for half a mile before opening onto a clearing. The house was beautiful, modern glass and steel, positioned to overlook a small lake. Nothing about it screamed safe house. It looked like somewhere you'd vacation, not hide from criminals. This is secure? Evelyn asked doubtfully. Cameras on every approach, reinforced walls, security system that would make the Pentagon jealous. Lucian opened his door. And it's in my name, but buried under enough shell companies that it'll take days to trace. We have time. Inside, the house was as impressive as the exterior. Open floor plan, expensive furniture, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake, the rain dimpling its gray surface. Make yourself comfortable, Lucian said. We'll be here a few days. How many days? As long as it takes to make this situation manageable. He headed toward what looked like an office. Marco, Sal, perimeter check. Evelyn, there's food in the kitchen, clothes in the bedroom upstairs. Help yourself to anything. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the middle of a stranger's house that apparently belonged to him. One of how many properties? She was starting to understand the scope of Lucian's power, and it was both impressive and terrifying. She found the kitchen and made coffee she didn't really want, just to have something to do with her hands. Through the window, she could see Marco walking the tree line, talking into his radio. Sal checked the garage. This was her life now. Guards and safe houses and running from men who wanted something she didn't have. You're spiraling. She turned. Lucian stood in the doorway, watching her with that unsettling intensity. I'm processing, she corrected. Processing looks like spiraling from here. He moved into the kitchen, reaching around her for a mug. His proximity made her breath catch. Talk to me. About what? About what you're thinking, feeling. Evelyn laughed, a sharp sound. I'm thinking my life is insane. I'm feeling like I stepped into someone else's nightmare. Fair. He poured coffee, leaned against the counter. But you're still here, still standing. What choice do I have? There's always a choice. You could have run when those men showed up at your apartment, could have screamed for help. Instead, you followed my lead. Because you told me to. No, because you trusted me. His voice softened. Why? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe because you've been honest with me. Maybe because you're the only thing between me and chaos right now. Or maybe, he said quietly, because you recognize something in me. The same thing I saw in you. What's that? Someone who understands that survival sometimes means making choices you never thought you'd have to make. The truth of it struck her silent. She did understand. Had understood the moment she'd whispered that warning in the restaurant, stepping into Lucian's world without fully realizing what she was doing. I'm scared, she said. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. I'm scared of more than just the danger. She met his eyes. I'm scared of what I might become if I stay in your world. Lucian set down his mug and took a step closer, not touching, but near enough that she could feel the heat of him. You want to know what I think? He asked. Tell me. I think you've been hiding for so long you've forgotten who you actually are. I think your father's death cracked something open, and you're terrified of what might come through. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle it made her chest ache. But I've seen who you are, Evelyn, and she's not someone to be afraid of. How can you be so sure? Because I'm still alive. Because when it mattered, you chose courage over safety. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. That's not something you learn. It's something you are. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Evelyn's heart hammered. She should step back, create distance, but she couldn't make herself move. Lucian. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, checked the screen, and his expression went cold. I have to take this. He stepped away, answering in Italian. Evelyn exhaled shakily, her skin still tingling where he'd touched her. This was dangerous, not the guns or the chase, but the way Lucian made her feel. Like she mattered, like she was more than the invisible girl who'd spent years disappearing. She finished her coffee and went to explore the house, needing distance to think. The bedroom upstairs was enormous, with a view of the lake and an attached bathroom that was bigger than her entire apartment had been. Clothes hung in the closet, women's clothes, in her size. Someone had been very thorough. She showered, letting hot water wash away the fear and confusion. When she emerged, she found the clothes Lucian had mentioned, jeans, sweaters, even pajamas. All tasteful, all perfect. Downstairs, voices drifted from the office. She followed the sound. Lucian stood by a desk, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand braced against the surface. Marco was with him, looking grim. Don't care what it takes. I want to know who ordered the surveillance and why. Lucian's voice was pure ice. And find out if Andretti knew your father was keeping photos. Yes, by tonight. He hung up and looked at Evelyn. You need to see something. Marco pulled up images on a laptop, the photos from her father's computer but enhanced, details sharpened. We ran facial recognition on everyone in these pictures, Lucian said. Most are dead or retired, but 3 are still active in the Andretti organization. He pointed to each one. Anthony Patterson you knew about. This is Carlo Andretti, the current head of the family. And this, he enlarged a photo of a younger man with cold eyes, is his son, Dante. Evelyn studied Dante's face. There was something familiar about it, but she couldn't place why. Dante Andretti runs enforcement for his father, Lucian continued. He's also been expanding into territories that don't belong to him, including several of mine. So this isn't just about my father's files. No, this is about power and territory. Your father's files are leverage. But Dante's been looking for a reason to move against me for months. You gave him one. The weight of that settled over her. So I'm just collateral damage. No, Lucian's voice was firm. You're the reason I'm going to end this before it becomes a war. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, Andretti Sr. called. He wants a meet. When? Tomorrow. Neutral ground. Just you and him. Lucian considered this. Terms? No weapons? No guards? Just talk. He's lying, Evelyn said. Both men looked at her. Sorry, but he is. If he wanted to talk, he wouldn't have sent people to my apartment. She's right, Marco said. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Lucian smiled, and it was a dangerous thing. But Carlo doesn't know I'm expecting one. Set it up, Marco. I want 2 teams in position before I arrive. And get me everything on Dante's recent movements. Marco nodded and left. Evelyn crossed her arms. You're really going to meet with him? I have to. This ends through negotiation or through blood. I prefer negotiation. But you're prepared for blood. Always. He moved closer, his expression softening. Don't worry. I've been doing this a long time. That doesn't make me worry less. Then let me ask you something. He tilted his head. If I don't go, if I hide here with you, how long before Andretti escalates? Before he stops looking for leverage and starts burning down everything I've built? How long before someone else gets hurt? She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. He was right. Running only delayed the inevitable. When you meet him, she said quietly, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Not to the meeting, but I want to be close, in one of the cars or something. I'm part of this now, Lucian. I should be there. He studied her for a long moment. Why? Because sitting here waiting to find out if you're alive or dead sounds worse than any danger I might face. Something in his expression shifted, surprise maybe, or recognition. You barely know me. I know enough. The same words he'd said to her. They hung in the air between them, an echo of a promise neither had fully acknowledged yet. "Fine," he said finally. "But you stay in the car with Marco. No heroics."
"No heroics," she agreed. He reached out, his hand cupping her face. "I need you to understand something. After tomorrow, there's no going back. Either this works, or things get very ugly very fast. If you want out, now is the time." Evelyn leaned into his touch, making a choice she knew she couldn't unmake. "I'm not going anywhere." His eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for fear. Whatever he found must have satisfied him, because he leaned in and pressed his forehead to hers. "Then we do this together," he murmured. And in that moment, with rain falling on the lake outside and danger waiting in the city, Evelyn realized she wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, she was chosen, and she was absolutely terrified of what that meant. The night before the meeting, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She stood at the bedroom window watching moonlight silver the lake, her mind racing through every possible outcome. Most of them ended badly. Footsteps in the hallway made her turn. Lucian appeared in the doorway, barefoot, wearing only dark pants and a t-shirt. She'd never seen him so casual. It made him look younger, more human. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much thinking." He moved to stand beside her at the window. "Want to share? I keep trying to figure out what my father would do. If he'd want me involved in this, or if he'd be furious that I didn't run the second I had the chance. What do you think he'd say?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment, remembering her father's face during those final weeks. The way he'd gripped her hand, trying to tell her something important through the morphine haze. She'd thought he was just confused. Now she wondered, "I think he'd tell me to be smart, to not trust anyone completely, to always have an exit strategy." She glanced at Lucian. "He'd definitely tell me not to trust you." Smart man. "But he'd also tell me that sometimes the safest choice isn't the right one." She turned to face him fully. "He left that life for me, spent 26 years protecting me from it, and now here I am anyway." "That bothers you." "It feels like I wasted his sacrifice. Like all those years of him being careful, being invisible, keeping secrets. It didn't matter. I ended up here anyway." Lucian was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "My father used to say that you can't outrun your blood, that who you are is already written, and fighting it only makes you weak." He met her eyes. "But I think he was wrong. I think we get to choose who we become. Your father chose to leave, you chose to stay. Those are different decisions, but they're both brave." "I don't feel brave. I feel terrified." "Fear and courage aren't opposites, Evelyn. Courage is what you do even when you're afraid." He reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist where her pulse hammered. "Your heart's racing." "Is yours?" He took her hand and pressed it to his chest. Beneath the soft cotton, his heart beat steady and strong. Not slow, but controlled. Like everything else about him. "I stopped being afraid of death a long time ago," he said quietly. "But I'm afraid of other things now." "Like what?" "Like failing the people who depend on me, like becoming the man my father was. Like," he paused, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Like watching you realize I'm not worth the risk you're taking." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Evelyn's breath caught. "Why do you care what I think?" "Because you see me." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Not the power or the reputation. You see me. And that's terrifying and addictive in equal measure." She should step back, should remember that this man was dangerous, that getting close to him meant diving deeper into a world she didn't understand. But his touch was warm, and his eyes held something that looked like need, and she was so tired of being alone. "Lucian." He kissed her. It wasn't rough or demanding. It was careful, almost hesitant, like he was giving her room to pull away. His lips were soft against hers, and when she didn't retreat, his hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. Evelyn's hands found his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. Heat bloomed through her, chasing away the fear and uncertainty. For just a moment, there was only this, his mouth on hers, his heartbeat under her palm, the way he held her like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "I shouldn't have done that," he said. "Why not?"
Because tomorrow is going to be dangerous, and I need you clear-headed, not— He pulled back slightly, his expression conflicted. Not confused about what this is. And what is this? I don't know yet, but I know it's real, and I know it's a complication neither of us needs right now. The honesty stung, but she appreciated it. So what do we do? We survive tomorrow, and then we figure out the rest. His thumb traced her lower lip, gentle and devastating. But Evelyn, after this is over, I'm going to kiss you again. And I won't stop until you tell me to. The promise sent heat curling through her stomach. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He stepped back, putting necessary distance between them. Get some sleep, we leave early. Then he was gone, leaving her standing at the window with her lips still tingling and her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Sleep, when it finally came, was restless and full of dreams she couldn't quite remember. Morning arrived cold and gray. Evelyn dressed in the clothes Lucian's people had provided. Dark jeans, a black sweater, boots that were broken in enough to run in if necessary. She pulled her hair back, studying her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked harder than she had a week ago. Eyes sharper, jaw set with determination. When had that happened? Downstairs, the house was alive with activity. Marco and Sal checked weapons with efficient precision. Two other men she didn't recognize were setting up communication equipment in the living room. Lucian stood at the center of it all, dressed in a dark suit, giving orders in rapid Italian. He looked every inch the crime boss this morning. The gentle man from last night was gone, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. Ready? He asked when he saw her. As I'll ever be. He nodded to Marco. Brief her. Marco pulled out a tablet showing her a map of the city. The meet is here. Millennium Park. Public space, lots of witnesses. Carlo suggested it. Why there? Because it limits what either side can do. Too many civilians, too much exposure. It's supposed to be neutral ground. But you don't believe that. We believe in being prepared. Marco zoomed in on the map. We'll have 4 teams positioned around the park. Sal will be with you in the primary vehicle 2 blocks away. If anything goes wrong, he gets you out immediately. And if something goes wrong with Lucian? Then I handle it, Marco said flatly. Evelyn looked at Lucian. You're really walking into this with no weapon, no backup? Carlo and I go back 20 years. We've had our disagreements, but we've always talked first. That still means something. He crossed to her, lowering his voice. Stay with Sal. Don't leave the vehicle for any reason. If things go bad, you run. Understand? You keep telling me to run. Because I need to know you will if it comes to that. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Promise me. She wanted to argue, to insist she wouldn't leave him, but the look in his eyes told her this was important, that he needed this reassurance to walk into whatever was coming. I promise, she said quietly. Good. He released her hand and stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. Let's move. The drive into the city was tense and silent. Evelyn sat in the back of the SUV with Sal, watching Chicago wake up around them. Normal people heading to work, grabbing coffee, living their lives. She envied them their ignorance. They approached Millennium Park from the south, passing the bean sculpture that tourists loved. Even this early, people were scattered across the grounds. Joggers, photographers, homeless people claiming benches. There, Sal said, pointing to a man standing near the J. Pritzker Pavilion. Even from a distance, Evelyn could tell it was Carlo Andretti. He had the same commanding presence as Lucian, the same way of owning space. Lucian's vehicle pulled up to the curb. He stepped out, and even from 2 blocks away, Evelyn could see the moment Carlo spotted him. The older man's posture shifted, becoming more alert. Marco's with him? Evelyn asked. Close by. Not visible, but close. Sal was scanning the area through binoculars. I've got 3 of ours in position. Can't see all of Andretti's people yet, but they're here. Her heart hammered as she watched Lucian walk toward Carlo. They met near the pavilion, 2 men in expensive suits having what looked like a civil conversation. From this distance, she couldn't read their expressions or hear their words. What are they saying? No idea. Boss didn't want to risk a wire. Sal shifted, adjusting his view. Wait, movement on the east side. 3 men,
heading toward the meet point. Is that normal? No? Sal's hand went to his radio. Marco, you seen this? The radio crackled. Confirmed. That's Dante Andretti and 2 of his crew. This wasn't the deal. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She could see Dante now, the man from her father's photos, moving with purpose toward where Lucien and Carlo stood talking. Lucien's posture changed. He'd seen Dante too. Carlo turned, and even from here, Evelyn could see the surprise on his face. He hadn't known his son was coming. This is bad, Sal muttered. This is very bad. Dante reached the 2 men and said something. Carlo's response was sharp, his hand cutting through the air in a dismissive gesture. But Dante wasn't backing down. He stepped closer to Lucien, his body language aggressive. Come on, boss, Sal whispered. Walk away. But Lucien wasn't walking. He was standing his ground, saying something to Dante that made the younger man's face flush with anger. Then everything happened at once. Dante's hand moved toward his jacket. Marco appeared from somewhere, gun drawn. Carlo grabbed his son's arm. More men materialized, from both sides, weapons appearing like magic. We're blown, Sal said into his radio. All units, convergence on the pavilion, now. He threw the SUV into gear, and they were moving before Evelyn could process what was happening. The vehicle screamed through 2 blocks, screeching to a halt at the edge of the park. Stay here, Sal ordered, already opening his door. But Evelyn could see the chaos unfolding, tourists scattering, guns drawn, Marco and Lucien back to back, surrounded by at least 6 of Andretti's men. Carlo was shouting something, trying to restore order, but Dante had pulled a weapon. Evelyn's training, all those years of being invisible, of knowing when to duck and when to run, kicked in. She should stay in the car, should follow orders. Instead, she opened her door and ran. Evelyn, no! Sal's shout followed her, but she was already sprinting across the grass. She had no plan, no weapon, nothing but the insane need to not sit helplessly while Lucien died. Her feet pounded the pavement as she closed the distance, her breath coming in gasps. Someone grabbed her arm. She spun, found herself face to face with one of Dante's men. He was bigger, stronger, and clearly surprised to see a civilian running toward the standoff instead of away from it. His surprise was her advantage. She stomped on his instep, exactly like the self-defense class she'd taken years ago had taught her. When he loosened his grip, she yanked free and kept running. Evelyn? Lucien's voice sharp with fear. She reached the inner circle just as Dante raised his gun, pointing it at Lucien's chest. This ends now, Dante was saying. You've been a problem too long, Moretti. My father's too weak to do what's necessary, but I'm not. Dante, put the gun down. Carlo's voice was hard. This isn't how we handle business. Business? Dante laughed, ugly and sharp. You think this is about business? He's taken our territory, our revenue, our respect, and now he's got Hart's daughter, the one person who might know where the old man hid his insurance policy. All eyes turned to Evelyn. There she is, Dante said, his smile vicious. Right on cue. You know, I've been wondering what your father told you before he died. What secrets he whispered. He didn't tell me anything, Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. He was barely conscious at the end. I don't believe you. Dante's gun swung toward her. But it doesn't matter. Dead or alive, you're worth the same to me. Leverage against Moretti or a message to anyone else who thinks they can. The gunshot was deafening. For a terrible second, Evelyn thought she'd been hit. Then she realized Dante was stumbling backward, his gun falling from his hand. Blood bloomed across his shoulder. Carlo stood behind his son, his own weapon smoking. I said, put the gun down. Carlo's voice was ice. You don't point weapons at civilians, and you don't start wars without my permission. You've forgotten your place, son. Dante clutched his shoulder, his face twisted with pain and fury. You shot me. For him? I shot you for breaking the rules, for dishonoring this family. Carlo lowered his weapon, his expression disgusted. Get him out of here, and someone call this off before the police arrive. The tension broke. Dante's men grabbed him, hauling him away. Carlo's other people holstered their weapons. Marco did the same, though he stayed close to Lucien. Carlo turned to Evelyn. Miss Hart, I apologize for my son's behavior. He's ambitious and stupid, a dangerous combination. He wanted to kill me. Yes,
But I didn't authorize it, and I don't condone it. Carlo looked at Lucian. We need to talk. Somewhere private, just the two of us. Fine, but she comes too. Lucian, Evelyn started. She's part of this now, Lucian said firmly. Whatever you have to say, she deserves to hear it. Carlo studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. There's a restaurant 2 blocks from here. I know the owner. We can use the private room. They walked through the park in a strange procession, Carlo and 2 of his men in front, Lucian and Evelyn in the middle, Marco and Sal bringing up the rear. Evelyn's legs felt like water, adrenaline still singing through her veins. That was incredibly stupid, Lucian said quietly. I know. You could have been killed. I know. Don't do it again. She looked up at him. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath the skin, but his hand found hers, squeezed hard enough to hurt. I won't, she lied. The restaurant was closed for a private event, Carlo's doing, apparently. They were ushered into a back room with a single table, 6 chairs, and no windows. Evelyn sat between Lucian and Marco, very aware of the 3 armed men at Carlo's back. Carlo poured himself a glass of wine, offered the bottle around. No one accepted. Your father was a good man, Miss Hart, Carlo said finally. Honest, in his way. He kept our books clean, made sure we could operate without attracting attention. When he asked to leave the life, I let him go because I respected him. Then why send men to my apartment? I didn't. Carlo's expression was grim. That was Dante, operating without my knowledge or approval. He's been making moves, trying to force my hand toward a more aggressive posture, including going after Robert's potential files. Why does everyone think my father kept files? Evelyn's frustration bled through. If he had them, wouldn't he have used them for leverage? Wouldn't he have protected himself? Robert was careful, too careful to keep physical evidence where it could be found easily. Carlo sipped his wine. But he was also smart. He knew that someday someone might come looking. That's why he took out insurance. What kind of insurance? Carlo looked at Lucian. You haven't told her. Told me what? Evelyn turned to Lucian. He met her eyes steadily. Your father set up a trust, a substantial one. It was supposed to activate upon his death, transferring assets to you. But there was a condition. You had to come to me to claim it. The words didn't make sense. What? Robert came to see me 6 months before he died, Lucian continued. He said if anything happened to him, if people started looking for his insurance files, I was to protect you. In exchange, he'd give me information that would help consolidate my position in the city. He gave you information about us, Carlo said. It wasn't a question. About your operations, your vulnerabilities, your succession plans. Enough to make war very costly for you if it came to that. Lucian's voice was matter-of-fact, but he also made me promise that I'd keep Evelyn safe, that I'd make sure she had a choice about her future. Evelyn felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. My father planned this? All of it? Not all of it. He couldn't have predicted Vincent, or Dante's ambition, or… Lucian paused. Or what would develop between us. But yes, he set things in motion. He wanted you protected, and he knew the only way to guarantee that was to make you valuable to someone with power. So I'm an asset, a bargaining chip. No, Lucian's hand covered hers on the table. You're a person your father loved enough to make impossible deals to protect. He knew this world would come for you eventually. He just made sure you'd have allies when it did. Carlo set down his wine glass. The trust your father established contains more than money, Miss Hart. It contains documents, names, dates, transactions, everything he witnessed during his time with my organization. If those documents were released, they would destroy my family's business and likely send several people to prison. Including you? Including me. Carlo's smile was bitter. Your father was a bastard in his way. He ensured that protecting you would be in everyone's best interest. As long as you're alive and safe, those documents stay sealed. If anything happens to you, they go to the FBI. The scope of it took her breath away. Her father, kind, quiet Robert Hart, had engineered a protection scheme that forced criminals to keep his daughter safe. He must have really loved you, Marco said quietly. Evelyn's eyes burned. He never told me any of this. Because telling you would have put you at risk, Lucian said. As long as you were ignorant,
You were harmless. But the moment he died, the clock started ticking. People would start wondering about those files, and you'd need protection. So he gave me to you. He gave you a choice. Lucian's voice was gentle. The trust is yours. The documents are yours. You can release them, destroy them, or keep them sealed. You can take the money and disappear, or you can stay and use the leverage. Your father arranged the pieces, but you get to decide how the game ends. Evelyn looked at Carlo. And if I release the documents? If I burn everything down? Then my family goes to war with you, and you lose. Carlo's voice was flat. I'm not threatening you, Miss Hart. Just being honest. Your father's insurance works because everyone has something to lose. Destroy that balance, and the consequences are ugly for all of us. So I'm trapped. You're protected, Lucian corrected. There's a difference. She wanted to scream, wanted to rage at her father for putting her in this position, at Lucian for keeping secrets, at Carlo for being part of the machinery that had swallowed her life. But rage wouldn't help. Her father had taught her that much. Emotion was a luxury you couldn't afford when survival was at stake. I need to see these documents, she said finally. Carlo nodded. They're in a safety deposit box. Your father's lawyer has the key. I can arrange a meeting. Today, Carlo agreed. He stood, signaling his men. For what it's worth, I'm sorry my son threatened you. He'll be dealt with. Dealt with how? That's family business. Carlo's expression closed off. But he won't be a problem for you again. You have my word. After Carlo left, Evelyn sat in the silent room with Lucian and Marco. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything. You should have told me, she said to Lucian. I wanted to, but I needed you to trust me first. If I'd led with, your father made a deal that ties you to me, would you have stayed? No. Exactly. She looked at him. This man who'd been manipulating her circumstances while also protecting her, who'd kissed her last night while keeping crucial secrets. She should be furious, should feel betrayed. Instead, she just felt tired. The trust, she said. How much money are we talking about? Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life, anywhere you want. And the documents? I haven't seen them. But based on what your father told me, they're comprehensive, decades of records. Evelyn stood, pacing the small room. Her whole life, her father had been two people, the sick man who needed her care, and the criminal strategist who'd built a fortress around her from beyond the grave. She didn't know which one was real. Maybe both. Maybe neither. I want to see the lawyer, she said. Now. Marco made the call. The lawyer, a man named Preston, could meet them in an hour at his office downtown. They drove in silence. Evelyn stared out the window, watching the city pass. Somewhere in this maze of buildings and people, her father had walked these same streets, made these same calculations. Had he known, at the end, that she'd end up here? Had he planned for it, or just hoped? Preston's office was in a tower in the Loop, all glass and steel and expensive art. The man himself was in his 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. Miss Hart. He shook her hand formally. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a remarkable man. It seems like everyone knew him better than I did. Preston's expression softened. He talked about you constantly. You were his greatest pride and his deepest fear. Everything he did for you. Show me the documents. Preston led them to a conference room. On the table sat a metal box sealed with a combination lock. Your father left the combination in his will, Preston said, handing her a piece of paper. Evelyn's hand shook as she dialed the numbers. The lock clicked open. Inside were 3 things: a letter addressed to her, a flash drive, and a key. She picked up the letter first, her father's handwriting, shaky from the illness but still recognizable. Evie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and the world I tried to protect you from has found you anyway. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for the secrets. Sorry for the burden I'm leaving you with. The flash drive contains everything: names, numbers, evidence. It's worth millions to the right people, and deadly to many others. It's also your shield. As long as it exists, sealed in secret, you're valuable. The moment it's released or destroyed, you become expendable. I've made arrangements with Lucian Moretti. He's young, ambitious, but he has honor in his way. More importantly, he has power.
He'll protect you because I've given him reason to. But Evie, don't mistake protection for safety. This world eats people. Don't let it eat you. The key is to a storage unit. Inside, you'll find money, cash, hidden over the years. It's clean, untraceable. If you ever need to run, use it. I wish I could have given you a normal life, but normal was never an option for us. The best I could do was give you choices. Make them count. I love you. Always have. Always will. Dad. Evelyn's vision blurred. She set the letter down carefully, afraid she might tear it if her hand shook any harder. The storage unit is in Evanston, Preston said quietly. I have the address. She picked up the flash drive. Such a small thing to carry so much weight. Her father's life's work, distilled into megabytes of data. Can I see what's on it? She asked. Not here. Not safely. Lucian's voice was gentle. We take it somewhere secure, with proper protection. If people knew you had that drive in your possession right now, I get it. She closed the metal box, the letter and flash drive, and key tucked inside. We go somewhere safe. They left Preston's office with the box under Marco's arm, Evelyn flanked by Lucian and Sal. The elevator ride down felt endless, every floor a chance for something to go wrong. But they made it to the garage without incident. The SUV was waiting, engine running. They were halfway to the vehicle when shots rang out. Glass exploded. Marco shoved Evelyn down, his body covering hers as bullets sparked off concrete and metal. Someone was screaming, the world reduced to chaos and noise and the weight of Marco's body pressing her into the ground. Then Lucian was there, hauling her up, pushing her toward the SUV. Go! Go! She stumbled into the vehicle. Lucian dove in after her and Sal was already driving, tires screaming as they rocketed out of the garage. Behind them, Marco and two other guards returned fire. The sound was deafening. Are you hit? Lucian's hands were on her, checking for wounds. No, I don't think so. Marco. He's fine. He's doing his job. Lucian pulled her against his chest, his heart hammering against her ear. You're okay. You're okay. But she wasn't okay. None of this was okay. Someone had just tried to kill her. Again. And this time they'd been waiting at the lawyer's office, which meant someone knew exactly where she'd be. Who was it? She asked, her voice muffled against Lucian's shirt. I don't know yet, but we'll find out. The SUV wove through downtown traffic, Sal driving with controlled precision. Behind them, pursuit vehicles tried to follow, but Sal lost them in the tangle of one-way streets and construction zones. 20 minutes later, they pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Evelyn didn't recognize. Armed men were waiting, more of Lucian's people. Secure the perimeter, Lucian ordered. I want to know who knew about that meeting and how they knew. He led Evelyn into a service elevator, up to a penthouse that rivaled the lake house for sheer expense. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but Lucian immediately drew the heavy drapes. Sit, he said, guiding her to a couch. She sat, still clutching the metal box. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, replaced by a strange numbness. Lucian crouched in front of her, his hands on her knees. Talk to me. My father knew this would happen. He knew people would come after me, and he still left me these documents. She looked down at the box. Why? Why not just destroy them? Because they were his only leverage, his only guarantee that you'd be protected. But they're not protecting me. They're painting a target on my back. The documents aren't the target, Evelyn. You are. Whether they existed or not, you'd still be valuable. The daughter of Robert Hart, the woman under my protection, that makes you a piece on the board regardless. She met his eyes. So what do? We change the game. Lucian took the box from her hands, set it aside, and took her hands in his. Your father gave you leverage. We use it. We make it clear that those documents are the reason you're untouchable, and that releasing them would destroy everyone. Mutually assured destruction. That only works if people believe I'd actually release them. Then we make them believe it. His grip tightened. We call a meeting, all the major families. We put it on the table. You're protected, the documents stay sealed, and everyone goes back to business as usual. Anyone who breaks that agreement answers to all of us. You think they'll agree to that? They'll agree because the alternative is war. And nobody wants that. It's expensive, unpredictable, and bad for business. Evelyn thought about it. The logic was sound, if terrifying. Turn her weakness into strength, her vulnerability into power. Use the very thing that made her a target as a shield. When? She asked. Tonight, before anyone else makes a move. Lucian stood, pulling out his phone. I'll set it up. He walked away, already making calls, his voice sharp with authority. Evelyn sat alone on the couch, her father's letter burning a hole in her pocket. She pulled it out, read it again. Don't mistake protection for safety. This world eats people. Don't let it eat you. Too late, she thought. She was already halfway down its throat. The question was whether she'd fight her way back out or learn to survive in the dark. The meeting was set for midnight at a warehouse on the south side. Neutral territory, Marco explained, owned by a shipping company that paid protection money to half the families in Chicago. Nobody would make a move there without starting a war with everyone. Evelyn spent the hours before in the penthouse, watching Lucian prepare. He made calls, his voice shifting between languages, Italian, Russian, what sounded like Mandarin. Each conversation was brief, transactional. She was learning that in his world, words were currency. You didn't waste them. Volkov's coming, he said after hanging up with someone. The Russians. They're curious. About me? About what you represent. Your father's files implicate their operations too. They'll want assurance those documents stay buried. How many families are we talking about? 6 major ones. Maybe a dozen smaller operators if they get wind of it. Lucian loosened his tie, the first sign of tension she'd seen from him all day. This is unprecedented, Evelyn. We don't do summits like this. Too many egos in one room, too much history. It's a powder keg. Then why are we doing it? Because the alternative is worse. Right now, everyone's operating on fear and incomplete information. They're making moves, testing boundaries. Someone's going to overstep, and then it's open war. He turned to face her. This way we control the narrative. We show strength, establish terms, and give everyone a reason to walk away. And if they don't walk away? His expression went hard. Then we make them wish they had. She should be terrified, should be begging him to find another way. But sitting in this expensive penthouse, wearing clothes someone bought for her, protected by men with guns, she was already too far gone for terror. Now she just wanted it over. What do I need to do? She asked. Stand beside me. Don't speak unless spoken to, and whatever happens, don't show fear. These people are predators. They smell weakness. I'm not weak. I know. He crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. But you're not one of them either. They'll see that. Use it. Let them underestimate you. And then? And then you prove them wrong. He kissed her, hard and possessive, like he was staking a claim. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with something that looked like need. After tonight, he said quietly, everything changes. You understand that? I know. You'll be marked. Known. There's no going back to invisible. I don't want invisible anymore. His thumb traced her lower lip. What do you want? The question hung between them, loaded with implications. What she wanted was complicated, safety and danger, freedom and belonging. This man and the life he represented, even though it terrified her. I want to stop running, she said finally. I want to choose my life instead of having it chosen for me. Even if that life is dark? Even then. Lucian's smile was small and genuine. Then stay close to me tonight, and trust that I won't let anything happen to you. At 11:30, they left the penthouse. Marco and Sal flanked them, with 4 additional guards forming a perimeter. The metal box with her father's documents stayed behind, locked in a safe. Bringing it to the meeting would be too much temptation. The warehouse district was industrial and empty, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Their convoy pulled up to a massive building with corrugated metal siding and no visible windows. Guards with automatic weapons stood at the entrance. That's more firepower than I expected, Marco muttered. Everyone's nervous, Lucian said. Nervous people bring guns. They were searched at the door, a humiliating process where hard-faced men patted her down with impersonal efficiency. Lucian submitted to it without complaint, setting the tone. This wasn't about pride, it was about survival. Inside, the warehouse had been cleared of cargo. Temporary lights hung from the ceiling, harsh and industrial. In the center of the space, someone had arranged tables in a rough circle. Men in expensive suits occupied most of the seats, each with their own complement of guards standing behind them. Evelyn recognized Carlo Andretti immediately. Beside him sat an empty chair, Dante's absence notable. Across from Carlo was a man with silver hair and cold blue eyes who had to be Volkov. Others she didn't know, but their body language told her everything. These were apex predators, barely tolerating each other's presence. Moretti. Volkov's English was accented but clear. You call meeting. We come. This better be worth our time. It is. Lucian's hand pressed against Evelyn's lower back, guiding her forward. Gentlemen, this is Evelyn Hart, Robert Hart's daughter. Every eye in the room turned to her. The weight of their attention was crushing. She forced herself to stand straight, to meet their gazes without flinching. We know who she is, Carlo said. The question is why we're all here instead of handling this through normal channels. Because normal channels got messy. Lucian pulled out a chair for Evelyn, then took the seat beside her. In the last 48 hours, Miss Hart has been targeted by at least 3 separate factions. There was an attempt at my restaurant, another at her apartment, a third at her lawyer's office today. This stops now. Why should we care? This from a man Evelyn didn't recognize, Asian, 50s, with scars on his hands. One girl, no matter whose daughter, is not our problem. She becomes your problem when her death triggers the release of documents that implicate all of you. Lucian's voice was calm. Robert Hart kept records. 30 years of transactions, names, connections, everything he witnessed while working for the Andretti family. Those records are currently sealed, protected by legal fail-safes. If anything happens to his daughter, they go to federal prosecutors. The room went very quiet. You're bluffing, someone said. Am I? Lucian looked at Carlo. Tell them about the trust. Carlo's expression was sour, but he nodded. It's real. Robert set it up through offshore accounts and third-party lawyers. I've had my people verify it. The documents exist and they're damaging. How damaging? Volkov asked. 30 years damaging. Names, dates, dollar amounts. Enough to bring RICO charges against every organization in this room. Carlo's hands were flat on the table. Robert was thorough. Paranoid, but thorough. Murmurs rippled through the assembled men. Evelyn could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. How much exposure did they have? How far back did their dealings with the Andretti family go? So what do you propose? Volkov asked Lucian. Simple. Miss Hart is declared off limits. No threats, no attempts, no harassment. She lives her life, and the documents stay sealed. Everyone goes back to business as usual. And if we refuse? Then the alternative is war. You move against her, I respond. That brings you into conflict with me and with the legal system if those documents get released. You willing to fight on 2 fronts? Volkov leaned back in his chair, studying Lucian with those cold blue eyes. You ask us to protect someone because she holds knife to our throats. This is not how trust is built. This isn't about trust. It's about incentive. Lucian's voice was hard. We all have secrets. We all have vulnerabilities. Robert Hart's documents are just another pressure point in a city full of them. You don't have to like Miss Hart or trust her. You just have to understand that her continued health is in your best interest. What about the girl herself? This from a woman at the far end of the table, elegant, 60s, with jewelry that probably cost more than a house. Does she agree to these terms? All eyes shifted to Evelyn again. She felt Lucian's hand find hers under the table, a brief squeeze of reassurance. Miss Hart? The woman prompted. Evelyn cleared her throat. My father spent 26 years protecting me from this world. He left his life behind so I could have a normal one. And now I'm here anyway, sitting in a warehouse with people who want me dead because of choices he made before I was born. She paused, gathering her courage. So yes, I agree to these terms. I have no interest in releasing those documents. No interest in causing problems for any of you. I just want to live my life without looking over my shoulder. Very pretty speech, Volkov said. But what guarantee do we have? What stops you from changing mind tomorrow, next week, next year? The same thing that stops you from coming after me despite this agreement, Evelyn said. Consequences. I release those documents, I lose my protection, I become a witness instead of a neutral party. And witnesses have unfortunate accidents. A few of the men smiled at that. Dark smiles, but appreciative. She's smart, the woman said. I like her. Smart doesn't mean trustworthy, someone else countered. No, but it means predictable. Carlo spoke up. A smart person acts in their own interest. Right now, Miss Hart's interest is staying alive and staying out of prison. That aligns with ours. As long as that remains true, we have a workable arrangement. What about Moretti? Volkov gestured at Lucian. He gets girl, he gets protection of her files, he consolidates power. What do we get? You get stability, Lucian said. No war, no federal investigations, no disruption to your operations. That's worth more than whatever leverage you think you'd gain by eliminating Miss Hart. And if we want more? Then we negotiate like civilized people. Lucian's smile was sharp. But that negotiation happens after we settle this. One crisis at a time. The men around the table exchanged looks. Evelyn could see alliances forming and dissolving in real time, each faction weighing their options. Finally, Carlo spoke. I'm in. The Andretti family recognizes Miss Hart's protected status. We make no moves against her. The Volkov organization agrees, Volkov said after a moment, but we want quarterly assurance that documents remain sealed. Proof of life. Proof of agreement. Acceptable, Lucian said. One by one, the other families fell in line. Some grudgingly, some with conditions, but they all agreed. By the time the last man had spoken, Evelyn had gone from target to protected asset. Then we have consensus, Lucian said. Miss Hart is under collective protection. Any violation of this agreement is considered an act against all parties at this table. Agreed, Carlo said. Others echoed the sentiment. The meeting should have ended there, should have dissolved into individual departures, everyone retreating to their own territories. But Volkov raised a hand. One more thing, the Russian said. The boy, Dante Andretti. He made moves against Girl, against Moretti. What happens to him? Carlo's expression went cold. My son is my business. Your son is liability. He broke rules, started conflicts, acted without authority. In my organization, such behavior would be dealt with permanently. Are you suggesting I kill my own son? I'm suggesting you remove him from operations before his stupidity costs us all. Volkov's voice was flat. He is ambitious and reckless. Bad combination. Dante will be handled, Carlo said through gritted teeth. He's been stripped of his position and sent away. He won't be a problem. Sent away is not same as neutralized. The tension ratcheted up. Carlo's guards shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Volkov's people did the same. Enough, Lucian's voice cut through the building hostility. Dante Andretti is Carlo's son. How that family handles internal discipline is their business. Unless he makes another move against Miss Hart, he's not our concern. And if he does make another move, Volkov asked, then he becomes everyone's concern, and Carlo deals with it, publicly. Lucian looked at Carlo. Fair? Carlo's jaw worked. Fair. The moment passed. Guards relaxed fractionally, but Evelyn could see the damage done, the crack in the Andretti family's armor, now visible to everyone in the room. We're done here, Lucian said, standing. Miss Hart and I are leaving. I trust there won't be any problems. It wasn't a question. They walked out, surrounded by Marco and their guards, every step measured and careful. Evelyn didn't breathe properly until they were in the SUV and moving. That went better than expected, Marco said from the front seat. Did it? Evelyn's hands were shaking again. Because it felt like we were one wrong word from a massacre. That's every meeting with these people, Lucian said. He pulled her against his side, his arm around her shoulders. But we got what we needed. You're protected now, officially. Until someone decides the agreement isn't worth keeping. Which is why we stay vigilant. Why you stay close to me. His hand cupped her face, turning her to look at him. But tonight was a victory, Evelyn. A real one. You walked into a room full of criminals and made them agree to your terms. That's power. She wanted to feel victorious. Wanted to celebrate the win. But all she felt was exhausted and overwhelmed. What happens now? She asked. Now we go home. We rest. And tomorrow we start planning your future. My future? The trust your father set up, the assets he left you, they're substantial.
You have options now. Real ones. Lucian's thumb stroked her cheekbone. You can walk away if you want. Set yourself up somewhere far from Chicago. Live quietly. The protection agreement holds regardless. Or you stay. Learn how to navigate this world properly. Build something of your own within it. He paused. With me, if you want. The offer hung between them, weighted with possibility. A week ago, she'd been invisible, a waitress drowning in medical debt, trying to survive each day. Now, she was sitting in an SUV with a crime boss who was offering her a place in his world. I don't know how to be the person you're describing, she said quietly. Neither did I when I started, but I learned. You will too. What if I make mistakes? What if I get someone hurt? Then you learn from it and do better next time. That's all any of us can do. His expression softened. You think I haven't made mistakes? Haven't gotten people hurt? This life is messy, Evelyn. Complicated. There's no perfect path through it. She leaned into him, letting his warmth and solidity anchor her. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But you're not alone in this. Not anymore. They drove back to the penthouse in comfortable silence. The city lights blurred past the windows, Chicago settling into its nighttime rhythm. Somewhere out there, the families they'd just met with were returning to their territories, adjusting their strategies based on tonight's agreements. And somewhere, Evelyn knew, people were already plotting how to break those agreements without consequences. But for now, for this moment, she was safe. The penthouse was quiet when they arrived. Marco did a security sweep while Lucian poured them both whiskey. I don't really drink, Evelyn said. Tonight you do. Doctor's orders. He handed her a glass, then raised his own. To Robert Hart. Bastard that he was, he loved his daughter enough to move mountains. Evelyn clinked her glass against his and drank. The whiskey burned going down, warmth spreading through her chest. Tell me about him, Lucian said, settling onto the couch. Your father. Not the criminal, not the strategist. Just the man. She sat beside him, curling her legs under her. He was quiet, liked crossword puzzles and old movies. He'd spent hours on a Sunday doing the New York Times crossword in pen. She smiled at the memory. He was terrible at cooking, but insisted on making breakfast every weekend. Burnt toast and rubbery eggs, but he was so proud of it. Sounds like a good father. He was. Even when he was sick, even when every breath hurt, he'd try to take care of me. I'd come home from work and find that he'd folded the laundry, even though it exhausted him. Or he'd have ordered groceries online because he knew I was too tired to shop. Her throat tightened. I didn't know he was protecting me from a whole other life, didn't know he'd sacrificed everything to keep me safe. Would it have changed anything if you had known? I don't know. Maybe I would have understood him better, maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone. She took another sip of whiskey. He died 3 months ago, and I feel like I'm just meeting him now. Through these documents, these arrangements, it's like discovering he was a stranger. He wasn't a stranger. He was a man who made difficult choices because he loved you. Lucian set down his glass. That's not nothing, Evelyn. That's everything. She looked at him, this dangerous man who kept surprising her with gentleness. What about your father? What was he like? Lucian's expression went distant. Brutal, effective. He built an empire through fear and violence, and he taught me to do the same. But he didn't love me. Not the way your father loved you. I was an investment to him, a legacy. That's horrible. That's reality for people like us. Love is a luxury. Power is survival. He paused. But I've been thinking lately that maybe he was wrong. Maybe love isn't weakness. What changed your mind? He looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. You did. Watching you walk into gunfire to save me. Watching you stand up to men twice your size because you refuse to be invisible anymore. That's not weakness, Evelyn. That's strength I've never seen before. Her heart hammered. Lucian, I meant what I said last night. After this was over, I was going to kiss you again, and I wasn't going to stop until you told me to. He shifted closer, his hand sliding into her hair. We're done with the crisis now. So I'm asking, do you want me to stop? She should say yes. Should remember that this man was dangerous, that his world was violence and secrets.
should protect what was left of her old life. But she was tired of protecting, tired of being safe. "No," she whispered. "Don't stop." He kissed her like he was claiming something precious. His hands were gentle but possessive, pulling her closer until she was half in his lap. She could taste the whiskey on his tongue, feel the controlled strength in his body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "I don't do this," he said quietly. "I don't let people in. Don't let them matter." "Why me?" "Because you're real. Because you don't want anything from me except honesty. Because when you look at me, you see past the power to the person underneath." His thumb traced her jaw. "And because I'm tired of being alone." Evelyn kissed him again, pouring every confused emotion into it, fear and desire and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. His hands found the hem of her sweater, slipped underneath to warm skin. She gasped against his mouth. "Bedroom," he murmured. "Unless you want Marco to get an education." She laughed, shaky and breathless. "Bedroom." He stood, lifting her with him like she weighed nothing. She wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her down the hall, their mouths never separating. The bedroom was dark except for city lights filtering through the curtains. Lucian set her down gently on the bed, following her down. His weight was solid and reassuring above her. "Last chance to change your mind," he said, his voice rough. "I'm not changing my mind." "Good, because I don't think I could stop now if I wanted to." He made love to her like he did everything else, with intensity and focus and careful attention. He learned what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch. And when she shattered beneath him, his name on her lips, he followed her over the edge with a groan that sounded like relief. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin. Lucian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Stay," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere. I mean permanently. Stay with me, in this city, in this life, in my bed." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I want you here, Evelyn. Not as an asset or a responsibility, just as you." She should ask for time to think, should consider all the implications. But lying here in the dark with this man who'd upended her entire world, the answer felt obvious. "Okay," she said. "Okay? I'll stay." His smile was brilliant and genuine. He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the taste of her. "I'll keep you safe," he promised against her lips. "I know. And I'll teach you how to be dangerous." She laughed. "Is that a requirement?" "In this world? Yes, but you're already halfway there. We just need to refine it." They talked into the early hours, sharing pieces of themselves. Lucian told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about the first time he'd had to kill someone, about the weight of running an empire built on blood. Evelyn told him about her mother, who died when she was 12, about dropping out of college to care for her father, about the years of feeling like she was disappearing one day at a time. "I don't want to disappear anymore," she said as dawn started to lighten the sky. "You won't. I won't let you." He pulled her closer. "You're mine now, Evelyn Hart, and I protect what's mine." The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it felt like safety, like belonging. She fell asleep in his arms as the sun rose over Chicago, the city waking up to a new day. And for the first time in months, she didn't dream about her father's hospital room or the sound of his failing lungs. She dreamed about the future. When she woke, Lucian was already up, standing at the window in just his pants, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking rapid Italian, his free hand gesturing as he talked. "Everything okay?" she asked when he hung up. He turned, and his expression was serious. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad, just complicated." He sat on the edge of the bed. "That was my contact in the Andretti organization. Dante's gone missing." "Missing how?" "He was supposed to report to a facility upstate, rehab officially. Really just a place to keep him out of the way while Carlo figured out what to do with him. But he never arrived. His car was found abandoned near the Indiana border." Evelyn sat up, pulling the sheet around her. "You think he ran?" "I think he's planning something stupid. Dante's ambitious and humiliated. That's a bad combination. Do you think he'll come after me? I think he'll try, which is why we're not taking any chances. Lucian's hand found hers. I'm moving you to a more secure location, the lake house. It's isolated, defensible, and I can control who has access. For how long? Until we locate Dante and neutralize him. Could be days, could be weeks. I can't hide forever, Lucian. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be smart while we handle this threat. His grip tightened. Last night, I promised to keep you safe. Let me keep that promise. She wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she couldn't. Not against someone like Dante, who had resources and motivation and nothing left to lose. Okay, she said, the lake house. But I want updates, real ones, not you trying to protect me from the truth. Deal. He kissed her forehead. Pack light. We leave in an hour. The next week passed in a strange limbo. The lake house was beautiful and isolated, perched on the edge of the water with woods on 3 sides. Marco and Sal rotated shifts with other guards, maintaining a perimeter that felt both comforting and suffocating. Lucian came and went, handling business in the city and returning each night. He'd arrived tired and tense, but he always made time for her. They'd have dinner by the lake, talking about everything and nothing. He started teaching her things, how to read people, how to spot threats, how to carry herself with confidence in dangerous situations. You're not training me, she said one evening. You're building me into something else. I'm showing you how to survive. There's a difference. He demonstrated a defensive move, his hands guiding her through the motion. Knowledge is protection, Evelyn. The more you understand about this world, the safer you'll be in it. Or the more dangerous I'll become. That too. His smile was sharp. But dangerous isn't bad. Dangerous means people think twice before coming at you. On the 8th day, Marco arrived with news. We found Dante. He's in Detroit trying to put together a crew. Looks like he's planning to make a move against Lucian's operations there. Detroit's not my territory, Lucian said. Why there? Because it's the one place where you don't have overwhelming force. He thinks he can establish a foothold, then leverage it into something bigger. Lucian's expression went cold. How many men does he have? Maybe a dozen, local talent mostly, nothing organized. Then it's time to end this. Lucian looked at Evelyn. I'm going to Detroit. I'll be back in 2 days. Let me come with you. Absolutely not. Lucian, this is the dangerous part, the part where people die. You're not ready for that. His voice was firm. Stay here with Marco. Stay safe. I'll handle Dante. She wanted to fight him on it, but the look in his eyes told her it would be pointless. Fine, but you come back. You understand? You don't get to die now that I've decided to stay. He kissed her, hard and thorough. I'm not dying. I'm too stubborn, and I have too much to live for now. He left that afternoon with Sal and a team of 6 men. The house felt empty without him, too quiet. Evelyn paced the living room, restless and anxious. Marco watched her with sympathetic eyes. He'll be fine, Marco said. Boss has been in worse situations. Doesn't make it easier. No, but that's what it means to care about someone in this life. The waiting, the worrying, the knowing they might not come back. He paused. Welcome to the family. She laughed despite herself. Is that what this is? A family? Closest thing most of us have. Marco's expression softened. Boss doesn't let people in easy. Fact that he let you in at all, that he's willing to go to war to protect you, that means something. Means you're one of us now. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they felt like validation, like she'd found the place she was supposed to be all along. 2 days felt like 2 years. Evelyn barely slept, jumping at every sound. Marco tried to distract her with training, with movies, with cooking elaborate meals neither of them had the appetite to eat. On the second evening, headlights cut through the dusk. Evelyn ran to the window, her heart in her throat. Lucian climbed out of the SUV, whole and unhurt. Relief flooded through her so intensely it left her shaking. She met him at the door, throwing herself into his arms. He caught her, holding tight. I'm okay, he murmured into her hair. I'm fine. It's over. Dante? Handled. He won't be a problem anymore. She pulled back to look at his face. What does that mean? It means he had a choice. Walk away forever or face consequences. He chose poorly. The implication settled over her. Dante was dead. Lucian had killed him or ordered it done, and she should be horrified, should be repulsed by the casual violence. But all she felt was relief that the threat was gone. Does that make me a bad person? She asked quietly. That I'm glad he's dead? It makes you a survivor. Someone who understands that sometimes violence is the only answer. Lucian cupped her face in his hands. I won't apologize for protecting you, Evelyn, and I won't pretend this life is clean or pretty, but I will promise you this, every choice I make, every action I take, it's with your safety in mind. She kissed him, pouring gratitude and relief and something deeper into it. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Take me home, she said. Where's home? Wherever you are. His smile was soft and genuine. Then let's go home. They returned to the penthouse that night, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a pause between chapters, the calm before whatever came next. Evelyn stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights reflect off Lake Michigan, while Lucian made calls in his office. She could hear his voice through the door, controlled, authoritative, wrapping up the loose ends of whatever had happened in Detroit. She didn't ask for details, didn't want to know exactly how Dante had died or who had pulled the trigger. Some things were better left in the dark. When Lucian emerged an hour later, his tie was loosened and exhaustion lined his face, but his eyes softened when he saw her. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. I will, soon. He crossed to the bar, poured himself whiskey. There's something we need to discuss first. Evelyn's stomach tightened. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just necessary. He gestured to the couch. Sit with me? She settled beside him, tucking her legs under her. He took a long drink before speaking. The situation with Dante is resolved, but it exposed vulnerabilities. People know about you now. Know about your connection to me, to your father's files. That makes you a permanent fixture in this world, whether we like it or not. I know. Which means we need to establish your position properly, not as someone under my protection, but as someone with power in your own right. He set down his glass. I want to transfer some of my legitimate holdings into your name. Real estate, businesses, things that generate income and give you independence. Evelyn stared at him. Why would you do that? Because if something happens to me, you need to be able to stand on your own, and because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you're dependent on me for survival. The gesture was more intimate than anything physical they'd shared. He was giving her freedom, real freedom, even if it meant she might use it to leave. What if I don't want independence? She asked quietly. What if I want to build something with you instead of beside you? His expression shifted, surprise, then something warmer. You'd really choose that? Knowing what it means? I'm already in this, Lucian. I stopped having clean hands the moment I whispered that warning in the restaurant. The moment I chose to stay instead of run. She took his hand. So stop trying to give me exit strategies and start telling me what comes next for us. He pulled her into his lap, his arms wrapping around her like he was afraid she might disappear. What comes next is we rebuild. My father's empire was built on fear and violence. I want to build something different. Still powerful, still profitable, but legitimate. Real estate development, legitimate import-export, technology investments. Things that can't be seized by the feds or destroyed by rivals. That sounds like a lot of work. It is. But I think you could help. You're smart, observant. You see things other people miss. His hand cupped her face. I could use a partner, Evelyn. Someone I trust completely. Someone who understands both sides of what I do. I don't know anything about running a criminal empire. Good, because I'm not building a criminal empire. I'm building a legitimate one with a complicated past. His smile was slight. And you know more than you think. You spent years managing your father's care, juggling bills and insurance and medical appointments. That's resource management. That's strategic thinking under pressure. Those skills translate. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to imagine herself as something more than a waitress who'd stumbled into the wrong world. What about my father's documents? She asked. They're still out there.
still a threat. They're also still your insurance. We keep them exactly where they are, sealed, protected, dangerous. As long as they exist, you're valuable alive. The moment they're destroyed or released, you become expendable. He brushed hair from her face. It's not perfect, but it's stable. And stability is the best we can hope for in this life. So I live the rest of my life with that hanging over me? We all live with something hanging over us. At least yours comes with a trust fund and a network of people motivated to keep you breathing. She laughed despite herself. You make it sound so romantic. Romance is overrated. I'm offering you partnership, honesty, and as much safety as I can provide. That's worth more than flowers and poetry. What if I want both? His smile was genuine this time. Then I'll work on my poetry, but I'm warning you now, it's going to be terrible. She kissed him, slow and deep, tasting whiskey and promises. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I'm scared, she admitted, of failing, of not being good enough for this life you're describing. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, just don't let it paralyze you. His thumb traced her jaw. You've already proven you can survive the worst this world throws at you. Everything else is just learning the rules. And if I break the rules, then you break them deliberately, with full understanding of the consequences. That's the difference between stupidity and strategy. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city humming beyond the windows. Evelyn's mind was already racing ahead, imagining what her life might look like a year from now, 5 years, 10. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When do we start? She asked. Tomorrow. But tonight, he stood, lifting her with him. Tonight, we sleep. Properly this time. No threats, no crisis, just rest. They fell into bed tangled together, and for the first time since her father's death, Evelyn slept without nightmares. The next morning started with coffee and Marco appearing with a stack of documents. These are the properties boss wants to transfer, Marco said, spreading papers across the kitchen island. 3 apartment buildings in Lincoln Park, 2 commercial properties in River North, and a restaurant in Wicker Park. All legitimate, all profitable. Evelyn stared at the paperwork. This is millions of dollars. Yes, Lucian said calmly, appearing from the bedroom in a suit. Which is why you're going to learn how to manage them properly. Marco's setting up meetings with the property managers this week. You'll shadow them, learn the operations, start making decisions. I don't know how to make those kinds of decisions. Then you'll learn. Same way you learned everything else, by doing it. He poured himself coffee. I have a meeting with the Andretti family this morning. Final wrap-up after Dante. You want to come? She should say no. Should ease into this new life slowly. But the memory of sitting in that warehouse surrounded by criminals while they decided her fate pushed her forward. Yes, I want to come. Lucian's smile was approving. Good. Wear something professional. We're negotiating, not intimidating. An hour later, Evelyn found herself in the back of an SUV heading to a restaurant in Little Italy. She wore a dark dress that Marco had somehow produced overnight, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Professional, but not corporate. The balance felt important. Carlo requested this meeting, Lucian explained as they drove. He wants to discuss ongoing arrangements now that Dante's out of the picture. Is he angry about his son? Carlo's practical. Dante was a liability. I did him a favor by handling it, even if he can't say that publicly. Lucian's hand found hers. But let me do the talking. This is still delicate. The restaurant was closed for lunch, empty except for Carlo and 2 of his men. The older man stood when they entered, his expression carefully neutral. Moretti, Miss Hart. He gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming. They sat. Coffee appeared, poured by a server who vanished immediately after. The ritual felt important, establishing normalcy, civility, before diving into business. I want to apologize, Carlo said, for my son's actions. He acted without family approval, without sanction. His death, while tragic for a father, was justified by his choices. I appreciate that, Lucian said carefully. But it does leave us with complications. Dante had been managing certain territories. Those need to be reassigned, and there are factions within my organization questioning my judgment, questioning whether I'm still strong enough to lead. Evelyn watched Carlo as he spoke, saw the weight of grief and pragmatism warring on his face. He'd lost his son, but couldn't afford to show weakness. It was brutal. "What do you need from me?" Lucian asked. "Support. Public support. A joint venture that shows the Andretti and Moretti families working together. Something that sends a message. I'm still in control, still capable of making strategic alliances." "What kind of venture?" "Development. There's a block in Greektown that's been stagnating for years, multiple owners, all of them stubborn. But if we pooled resources, we could buy them out, develop it properly. Split the profits." Lucian considered this. "Who manages the project?" "Shared management. My people handle permits and local relationships. Yours handle construction and financing." Carlo paused. "And perhaps Miss Hart oversees the business operations? As a gesture of good faith, showing her integration into our world." Evelyn's heart jumped. All eyes turned to her. "Me?" she managed. "You're Robert Hart's daughter. You have name recognition in certain circles, even if you don't realize it yet. And you're neutral. Not Andretti, not Moretti, but connected to both. That makes you valuable as a mediator." Carlo's expression was shrewd. "Plus, it would be good training. Real estate development is complicated. You'd learn quickly." Lucian was watching her, waiting for her reaction. This was a test, both from Carlo and from him. Could she step into this role? Could she handle the pressure? "I'd need support," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "People who know what they're doing. I'm not going to pretend I have expertise I don't have." "Of course. We'd provide full teams." Carlo smiled slightly. "But the final decisions would be yours. Your name on the paperwork, your reputation on the line." It was terrifying. It was also exactly what Lucian had been talking about. Building her own power, her own position. "Okay," she said. "I'm in." Carlo's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my lawyers draw up the partnership agreements. We can move forward next week." The rest of the meeting was details. Timelines, budgets, logistics. Evelyn listened carefully, taking mental notes. When they finally left an hour later, her head was spinning. "You handled that well," Lucian said in the car. "I felt like I was drowning." "You didn't show it. That's what matters." He squeezed her hand. "Carlo just gave you legitimate business experience and political capital. That's not charity. He wouldn't have offered if he didn't think you could deliver. He sees value in you. Or he's testing whether I'll fail. Also possible, but that's how this world works. Every interaction is a test. You just passed your first one." The project consumed the next 3 months. Evelyn threw herself into it with an intensity that surprised everyone, including herself. She spent days in meetings with architects and contractors, evenings reviewing financial projections, weekends visiting the site. Marco became her unofficial advisor, teaching her to read people and situations. Lucian provided strategic guidance when she needed it, but mostly let her figure things out on her own. And slowly, painfully, she started to understand how this world operated. The unspoken rules, the careful balance of respect and intimidation, the way power flowed through relationships rather than positions. The development itself was complicated. 3 property owners held out, demanding inflated prices. One of Carlo's men suggested less savory methods of persuasion, but Evelyn refused. "We do this legitimately," she told Carlo in a tense meeting. "The whole point of this project is showing we can operate above board. Start threatening people and we undermine that." Carlo studied her for a long moment. "You sound like your father. He hated unnecessary violence, too." "Then maybe he had the right idea." "Maybe." Carlo leaned back. "Fine. We negotiate. But if negotiation fails, we revisit our options." It took 6 weeks, but Evelyn eventually got all 3 holdouts to sell. Not through threats, but through finding what they actually wanted. One needed help with medical debt. Another wanted guaranteed jobs for his sons in the new development. The third just wanted to feel heard and respected. She gave them all what they needed, and the deals closed. "You're good at this," Lucian said one night as they reviewed the final contracts. "Better than I expected." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation. You have instincts for this work. You see people, understand what motivates them. That's rare." Evelyn set down the papers, suddenly overwhelmed. "My father would hate this. Hate that I'm in this world doing deals with criminals." "Your father was in this world. He just approached it differently." Lucian pulled her close.
And you're not doing deals with criminals.
You're doing legitimate business with people who have complicated histories. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because intention matters. Your father left the life to protect you. You're choosing to engage with it to build something better. Those aren't the same thing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think she was honoring her father's memory instead of betraying it. But late at night, doubt crept in. 6 months after that first meeting in the warehouse, the Greektown development broke ground. Evelyn stood at the site with Lucian, Carlo, and a crowd of investors and press. It was surreal, cameras flashing, reporters asking questions, her name on banners and promotional materials. "How does it feel?" Lucian murmured as they posed for photos. "Terrifying, exhilarating, unreal." "That's success." His hand pressed against her lower back, grounding her. "Get used to it." The project's success opened other doors. Investors who'd been skeptical of her suddenly wanted meetings. Other families started approaching her about joint ventures. She was becoming known, not as Lucian's woman or Robert Hart's daughter, but as Evelyn Hart, developer and dealmaker. It was intoxicating and exhausting in equal measure. One evening, 8 months into her new life, Evelyn sat in the penthouse office reviewing proposals when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then something made her pick up. "Miss Hart?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "My name is Patricia Chen. I was your father's nurse during his final weeks." Evelyn's breath caught. "I remember you. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I have something that belonged to your father. He asked me to give it to you, but only after enough time had passed. He said you'd know when you were ready." "What is it?" "A letter and a key to a storage unit I didn't know about. Can we meet?" They met the next day at a coffee shop in Evanston. Patricia was exactly as Evelyn remembered. Kind eyes, gentle manner, the sort of person who made dying patients feel human. "Your father talked about you constantly," Patricia said, sliding an envelope across the table. "He was so proud of you, but also so afraid of what might happen after he was gone." Evelyn's hand shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting, stronger than the last one, written before the illness had progressed too far. "Evie, if you're reading this," Patricia judged that enough time has passed, "that you've found your footing in whatever life came after my death. The key is to a second storage unit, not the one I mentioned in my will. That was for emergency money if you needed to run. This one contains something different. I spent 30 years in a world I couldn't fully leave behind. I made compromises, kept secrets, did things I'm not proud of. But I also tried to do good where I could, tried to help people who couldn't help themselves. The storage unit contains records of every person I helped. People I got out of debt, families I protected, children I put through school. It's not evidence or leverage, it's a reminder that even in a dark world you can choose to bring light. I don't know what life you're living now. Maybe you escaped completely. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, like I was. But wherever you are, remember this. You're not defined by the world you operate in. You're defined by the choices you make within it. Choose kindness when you can. Choose truth when it matters. And choose yourself when you must. I love you, Evie. I always will. And I believe in the woman you're becoming, even though I won't get to meet her. Dad. Evelyn read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Patricia sat quietly across from her, giving her space to grieve. "Thank you," Evelyn finally managed, "for waiting, for knowing when I'd be ready." "Your father was a good man," Patricia said gently. "Whatever else he was that too." Evelyn visited the storage unit that afternoon, Lucian at her side. Inside were boxes of records, names, dates, amounts. Hundreds of people her father had helped over the years. Families pulled from debt, kids given scholarships, small businesses saved from bankruptcy. "He was laundering money," Evelyn said, understanding dawning, "but he was also redirecting some of it, helping people." "Your father was complicated," Lucian said, scanning the records. "He did what he had to do to survive, but he also did what he could to make it mean something." Evelyn sat among the boxes, overwhelmed by grief and pride in equal measure. Her father had lived a double life, criminal and humanitarian, survivor and helper. He'd found a way to exist in darkness while still creating light. "I want to continue this," she said suddenly. "The helping.
We have money now, resources. We could set up a foundation, make it legitimate. Lucian crouched beside her. That's a big undertaking. I know, but it feels right, like honoring who he really was, not just who he had to be. Then we'll do it. He pulled her close. We'll build something good out of all this darkness, together. They spent the next month designing the framework, the Robert Hart Foundation, dedicated to helping families facing medical debt and crisis, funded by Evelyn's trust and profits from the Greektown development, managed by professionals but overseen by her. The announcement made waves. Evelyn Hart, daughter of a former crime family accountant, partner to Lucian Moretti, successful developer in her own right, was now a philanthropist. The press loved the story. The families were more skeptical. You're making yourself vulnerable, Carlo warned in a private meeting. Charity work, public visibility, it gives people angles to attack you. Let them try, Evelyn said, surprised by her own confidence. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not invisible. And if someone has a problem with me helping people, they can take it up with Lucian. Carlo's smile was approving. You've grown into this world, Miss Hart. Your father would be proud and probably horrified, both at the same time. That sounds about right. A year after that first night in the restaurant, Evelyn stood in the completed Greektown development at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The building was beautiful, mixed use with affordable housing, retail space, and the foundation's offices on the ground floor. People filled the space, celebrating. Lucian found her on the roof deck, away from the crowds. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just needed a minute. She leaned into him as his arms wrapped around her. This time last year, I was serving drinks and drowning in debt. Now I'm here. It doesn't feel real. It's real. You built this. You made choices and fought for them and created something that matters. His lips brushed her temple. I'm proud of you. Even though I'm not as ruthless as you wanted, especially because of that. You're teaching me something, Evelyn. That power doesn't have to mean destruction, that you can be strong and kind at the same time. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Are you going soft on me, Moretti? Maybe. Is that a problem? Not even a little bit. He kissed her there on the roof deck, the city spreading below them in all its complicated glory. When they broke apart, Lucian pulled a small box from his pocket. Evelyn's breath caught. Is that? I'm not good at romance. I don't know how to make grand gestures or say pretty things, but I know that I want you in my life, permanently and officially. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. Marry me, Evelyn. Build this life with me. Be my partner in everything. She should think about it, should consider all the implications. But standing here with this man who'd seen her at her weakest and her strongest, who'd given her freedom and protection and honest love, the answer was obvious. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Lucian was nothing if not thorough. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the lake house. Just close friends. Marco, Sal, Patricia, a handful of others who'd become family. No press, no spectacle, just promises made and meant. Carlo attended, bringing a gift and his blessing. Your father would have hated this, he told Evelyn quietly. But he also would have understood. Sometimes the only way forward is through the darkness. I'm not in the darkness anymore, Evelyn said. I'm finding the light. Then hold on to it. This world tries to take that from you. The foundation grew. Within 2 years, they'd helped hundreds of families. Evelyn hired former criminals trying to go straight, gave them legitimate work and second chances. It was messy and complicated, but it worked. Lucian followed through on his promise to go legitimate. The criminal enterprises were slowly wound down, replaced by real estate, tech investments, and clean money. It took years and cost him allies, but he did it. For her, for them, for the future they were building. They bought a house, not the penthouse, not the lake house, but something in between. A brownstone in Lincoln Park with a garden and space for the life they were creating. Room to grow. On their second anniversary, Evelyn found herself back at Millennium Park, walking the paths where Lucian had almost died, where she'd run toward gunfire instead of away from it. Why here? Lucian asked, his hand in hers. Because this is where I stopped being invisible, where I chose to matter. She looked up at him. I needed to remember that choice. Remember that it was mine. Do you regret it? She thought about her father, about the secrets and sacrifices and complicated love, about the darkness she'd walked through and the light she'd found on the other side, about this man who'd given her freedom and partnership and honest, imperfect love. Not for a second, she said. They stood together in the fading light, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and chosen to build something better. The city hummed around them, indifferent to their story. But they changed it anyway, in small ways and large. Made it a little less dark, a little more kind. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from the foundation. Another family helped. Another crisis averted. Small victories in an endless fight. Ready to go home? Lucian asked. Home. It was a word that meant something different now than it had 2 years ago. Not a place, but a person, a choice, a life built deliberately in the space between darkness and light. Yeah, she said, squeezing his hand. Let's go home. They walked away from Millennium Park together, past the spot where everything had changed, past the invisible girl she'd been, and toward the woman she'd become. Evelyn Hart Moretti, philanthropist and developer, wife and partner, survivor and builder of light in dark places. Her father had given her choices. Lucian had given her freedom. But the life she was living, complicated and messy and imperfectly beautiful, that was entirely her own. And she chose it. Every single day, she chose it. That was enough. That was everything. The city lights flickered on as evening settled over Chicago, and Evelyn walked into her future without looking back. No longer invisible, no longer afraid, no longer alone. Just herself. Finally, completely, powerfully herself. And that was exactly where she was meant to be.